going after the criminal gangs.
Well, it's getting wet here in Buckinghamshire. I think that storm is blowing in, we heard on the weather, Dawn. But for the Labour Party, they're hoping that with this ambitious document, that the sunnier plans are lying ahead.
Christopher, how on earth did you put up with that today? All I've heard so far is a word soup. When are they going to stop talking the talk and walking the walk? I mean, you know, mission statements and people in charge of, you know, the 5 missions with boards saying, what are the actual ministers doing? Why aren't they in charge of the boards and making these things happen?
Well, the idea is in Whitehall, you need to have firm targets to try and drive officials to do what you want. There's only a few political people running our country. The rest are all officials who are meant to do what they say. So Keir Starmer said at one point that he wanted that document to land on desks in Whitehall with the force of a gauntlet being laid down by this government. So I think whatever you think about the Labour government, they won a massive landslide back in July. The Tory government didn't do enough for millions of people. They were punished, some would say rightly probably, for the failures they did at those polls. It's now Labour's turn, and this is an attempt 5 months into their government to set the tone of what the government wants from Whitehall. You might wonder why all this wasn't done before they came into government. Well, it wasn't, and that's allowed, I would say, a degree of drift. We've seen Keir Starmer falling down in the polls from quite a high level shortly after the election. Issues with freebies, losing his chief of staff, the transport secretary last Friday. Right now, this is the time that this government wants to rebuild its reputation and deliver for the people. But we'll be judging them for GBNews all the way through that.
One of the most patient men I know, political editor Christopher Hope, thank you very much, joining us live from Pinewood, where Bond was filmed, indeed, wasn't it? And I think Sir Keir Starmer made a joke about Bond when he opened his statement this morning, didn't he? I was sort of like, I was thinking of films that would go with it. I came up with Live and Let Pensioners Die. What do you reckon? Come up with your own title. gbnews.com/your say. Lots of fun to be had with that one. But is it fun? Now, we'll speak to retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville for his take on Starmer's actual policing plans even. Right, Mike, thank you very much. Good to have you in the studio. Good company. Now, the crime pledge, one of the pledges was halving serious crime and halving violence against women and girls, putting 13,000 bobbies on the beat. I've written bobbles down here. Bobbies on the beat. By the time of the next election, 360 million to be spent on this, and we're all going to know the names of our local Bobby on the beat. Mike, take it away. Right, well, the idea of having the Bobby on the beat is a good one. You know, I was PC Neville at Clapham, number 2 beat, and it worked well. I ran a local youth group, I dealt with the local criminals, I even had a wall dedicated to my actions. That was curious. Which young PCs used to be shown, you know, and I was called all sorts of names on that because I was brutal and ruthless with criminals. So it is good. It's a good thing. However, what is a neighbourhood? You know, that bit, there was, at Clapham, there was 12 or something. Which was a Euro beat. It was quite, but there was 12 beat officers there, and that was just Clapham. So how many? What is a neighbourhood? Is it Bolton? Is it part of Bolton? Is it a bit of Bolton? And I just think a lot of the promises are nebulous, and it just doesn't help at all. But when in the police, what gets measured gets done, and it's the same as government. And they've not included, of course, immigration impacts on crime. 12% of criminals are, of course, foreign-born criminals who are clogging up our jails, committing crime on our streets. And yet what we hear is, oh, that's all part of it. And I just think people are sick and tired. All they want is if the house is burgled or if they're attacked, the car gets stolen, the police give them a good service. How they do that, I don't think most people care. They just want a reasonable service. No, absolutely. One of the pledges, the pledges before they were elected, and one of the pledges that are rolled into this latest round of pledges, 6 months on the reset, is the violence against women and girls, right? OK, that's a big thing with them. They mentioned it before they were elected, they're mentioning it now. And yet, and lots of people message about this one, we have boatloads of fit, young, working-age men coming across the channel and being put up in hotels and hostels, often next to schools where young girls go to school. Now, look, most of these people coming over are perfectly fine, but How is that helping this fight to protect women and girls?
Well, it's exactly. It's just causing the problem, isn't it? Because we don't know who these people are. And how many of these people we see time and time again are convicted of harassment, sexual assault and rape and even worse. And so they're just making that problem for women and girls. A lot of these men come from cultures where women are literally second-class citizens. That's second if they're lucky. Yeah. And so it simply isn't good enough. They're putting families at risk by doing this. And the police, the Met Police are saying they've got to lose 2,500 officers due to budget cuts. So it would seem all the time they promise this money, they promise that money, they take away this money. So they rob Peter to pay Paul. So where are these extra officers going? I mean, if the Met Police, for example, is reducing the flying squad, reducing all sorts of capabilities to investigate murders, these officers aren't going to be put on the beat, are they? They're going to backfill positions like that.
Do you think, I mean, the money mentioned for this is a £360 million fund. It doesn't sound that much money to me.
Well, it sounds like Diane Abbott's been on the calculator again. if you remember, she worked out that each officer cost about £10 or something. So I just think it's ridiculous. That money, when you look at the 43 different police forces in England, you only have to, so what was it, 300 so just
360 million
just divide, it's hardly anything, it's a few million each. And so that's just not going to make any difference whatsoever to individual police forces. The Met, of course, are really struggling. They've sold off all the family jewels, all the police stations, they've got nothing else to sell. So where are these extra officers coming from? It's a good idea to have them, but well, as I say, clear thing. How many is there in each town or per 10,000 people? And then it's good to know your officers. It's good to trust them. The police get more information. But I think if they did things like cut the diversity target, you've got no money in the police, no more diversity officers, get rid of them. Get rid of anybody who's doing anything that's nothing to do with catching criminals. That's what the public want, I think. They just want a police force that does its job, works hard, and they're not getting
What about the coppers that are scrolling through social media going, oh, it's a bit hurty?
Well, that's we see it time and time again. We see people arrested. Well, journalists, you have to look at the Alison Pearson thing. That, in what sort of country do the police go and target journalists over tweets? And then they're saying, we haven't got enough officers to visit your house because of burglary. And what the police don't do, they don't use technology. There's more searchable capability on your iPhone than they use to catch criminals who've been, caught on CCTV. It's a scandal, really.
Mike Neville, thank you very much for coming in. Well, Mike's angry. I'm angry, to be honest with you. How do you feel? gbnews.com/your say. Have your say on crime on your ear. When was the last time you saw a beat, Bobby? Me neither. OK, up next, we get the latest on how farmers are fighting back against the government's changes to inheritance tax. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. In for Mike and Daubney, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As Strictly Come Dancing approaches its iconic Blackpool episode, marking halfway through the competition, visually impaired dancers across the country have spoken out about how groundbreaking the casting of Chris McCausland is, who suffers from, if I hope I'm saying this correctly, retinitis pigmentosa, and they've found him particularly inspiring. We've been talking, Sean, about how the casting of Strictly has been inspiring to so many people, but I imagine there'll be lots of people who are watching this at home finding your story of resilience really inspiring, because you've obviously really been through it. Is dancing something that has sort of, helped keep you going through all of those troubles? And what does it mean to you to see casting like this on a show like Strictly Come Dancing?
Like I say, all the things I went through. So those 9 years when I wasn't dancing, I was still dancing in my head and just banging on to other people. Very much not just people with sight loss. I've been a big advocate for people with social isolation. So many people on their own now, social anxiety, especially since COVID. And I just want people to get out. The stuff that I'm doing and all the stuff Chris is obviously doing, it will inspire others. Again, like I say, just not people just recycling. I had so many people come up to me in the early days, guys, and now that say, you know what, Shawnee, I've seen you do it, so I'm just going to do it. But you just got to get over yourself, because if you bother to do the maths, because all it is maths and walking. Yeah. That's all it is.
Maths and walking actually sounds quite difficult.
Sean, thank you.
Oh, come on, mate. Can you shout? Can you walk? Crack on.
Sean, you're an inspiration. Thank you, mate, for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. You're a star, and so glad.
Just before I go, I'm just going to say this is Kev. Here's Kev.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson on GB News, in for Martin this afternoon. Now, let's talk farming, because this is another thing that's getting you very angry. The president of the National Farmers Union has vowed that farmers will fight the government's inheritance tax raid for as long as it takes, as many continue to fear the policy will spell the death of the family farm. This comes as a Conservative motion to block the family farm tax was defeated in the House of Commons yesterday. Who'd have thunk it, eh? With many rural Labour MPs voting in favour of the inheritance tax raid. Yeah, good luck with getting elected next time, you lot. Right, OK, we can now speak to one of the farmers who's voiced his concern against the government's plans, Charles Daubney, who comes to us live from Nuneaton. And thank you very much, Charles, for joining us. Now, the producers are having some debate about you're standing in a barn, they think with a cow, but they weren't sure.
Yeah, they've moved. They have just been walking behind me, but no doubt they'll be back some point. I think it's one line down there.
I was just slightly worried whether they could identify cows or not. They are very young. So, yeah. Charles, look, this was a Lib Dem debate that was put before the House yesterday. With the government's majority, no surprise, it failed miserably. How angry are you about what's going on?
Angry's not the word. To be honest, I found yesterday almost comedic. It was what we expected. I mean, Here we are. We've got a government and, well, basically what our government is now is a couple of people on the front bench. I think we can rule DEFRA out because the Treasury have overruled them. So they were disputed figures between the two of them initially, and now the Treasury have made DEFRA toe the line. So we've really got a Prime Minister, a Deputy Prime Minister, a Treasury, and a couple of whips. And they are who are running this country. Because I have met my MP, a newly elected Labour MP. I've also met a neighbouring Labour MP who have both said to me, the figures are wrong. We know they are. We want to support farmers. And there is a huge amount of backbenchers who want to support farmers. We heard that in the debates yesterday. A number of them stood up and said this isn't right. But they are frightened of losing their privileges in Parliament. And it's wrong. Where's democracy gone?
Well, exactly. They're there to serve you. They're there to serve us. Remember, that is their actual job. Charles, it's been very civilised. I mean, an amazing demonstration in Westminster the other week, which we covered, obviously, extensively on GB News. And it was very civilised, very calm. You know, you're not demanding too much. You're just demanding a few tweaks here and there, most of you. But how long is that goodwill going to last?
I think we're about at that straw that breaks the camel's back now. There's an awful lot of anger. There's a lot of discussions going on. We look at people like the NFU and we're looking to them to say, right, we need to know what sanctions there are now. It's not, as I've explained it to people, when I tell my kids off, if you don't follow through with the sanctions, they're just going to get worse and misbehave more. We need to make the government understand that this is serious. And if they don't take a serious look at the figures that they've got wrong and listen to the facts, there are going to be consequences.
And what are those consequences?
They're to be debated. There's a lot of discussions. I mean, the simple one is to withhold food production. I mean, it's very easy to say, there are going to be farmers that will hurt straight away. A lot of dairy farmers, that'll mean impacting their milk check from day one. they're going to be taking the brunt of that. There's going to be a lot of farmers on punitive contracts as well. If they don't supply what's on contract, they're going to be penalised. So it's got to be found out a way of how to do this. But, most importantly, we are concerned about the general public. We don't want to annoy people, and we don't want to hit the worst off, the poorest in society the most. And they're the ones that are going to get hit, the ones that can the least afford food, because it will impact food prices. But if we don't do anything, we're going to see food production in this country fall through the floor. And we are going to see major food inflation, and we're going to see regular empty supermarket shelves.
Yeah. Charles, if you do decide to take that extra action, I mean, are we potentially talking about shelves empty at Christmas that soon?
Absolutely. I mean, realistically, I think people have got to look and think about this. And actually, the next few weeks are going to be critical in the food supply chain and for the supermarkets and for everybody. This is the mad rush now for Christmas. And so if people chose to do it, now would be the ideal time to do it. Well, ideal time, I think, is the wrong word, because nobody wants to do it.
No,
but it was when we would have the maximum impact.
Yeah. And Charles, what does it mean for you personally, running your farm? I mean, will you survive this, or is it the end of the line for you and your farm?
So I spoke at my local council last night. They themselves have opposed this budget. And I explained to them, my 10-year average profits from farming has been £126 an acre. Now, on top of all this, we're seeing many other things, including the accelerated, removal of the decoupled payments, the basic payment scheme that we used to get the subsidy. So my predicted profit per acre is going to be around about £60 per acre from next year. And my father's the majority landowner. He's 80 years old. If he was to die and we were having to face the inheritance tax bill, that will cost me over 10 years in the region of £200 an acre. So food production here wouldn't be sustainable. And that is the story up and down the country. That's what every farmer's facing, every main food producing farmers. The only people that are going to get away with it are your smallholders and your pony paddocks, a lot of people that retired and bought themselves an idyllic country lifestyle, and your major big businesses that are investing outside money. Food production will not buy farmland now.
Yeah. Charles, it's not sounding good, is it? Thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon. I really appreciate your time. That's Charles Goby from Nuneaton, a farmer that is going to struggle. And you heard, we could have empty shelves at Christmas if the government don't do something about sorting this mess out. Now, there's still loads more to come between now and 4 o'clock, including the ongoing battle between Premier League footballers and the FA over some players refusing to wear those rainbow armbands. But first, let's get the latest news headlines with Cameron Walker.
Dawn, thank you. It's 3:30. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. The French Prime Minister Michel Barnier has resigned after his government was ousted in a no-confidence vote, the first since 1962. 331 MPs backed the motion, sparked by his use of presidential powers to push through a controversial €60 billion budget without a vote. Despite the resignation, he will remain in office until a successor is appointed. President Emmanuel Macron now faces the challenge of selecting a new Prime Minister from within a divided parliament. Macron is set to address the nation this evening. And in some breaking news, 2 Romanian nationals have been charged after an Iranian journalist was stabbed outside his home in Wimbledon. Nandito Badia, who's 19, and George Stainer, who's 23, were arrested in Romania yesterday. They are each charged with wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm and wounding after Paria Zerati was knifed in the leg on the 29th of March. Both defendants have now appeared in a Romanian court for the start of extradition proceedings. One of 2 teenagers convicted of murdering 26-year-old Brianna Jai have had a bid to challenge the length of his sentence dismissed at the Court of Appeal. Eddie Ratcliffe, who's 17, was detained for life with a minimum term of 20 years in February this year for the murder, along with co-defendant Scarlett Jenkinson, who received a minimum term of 22 years. Brianna was stabbed 28 times with a hunting knife during the fatal attack in Linear Park, which is near Warrington, in February last year. Sir Keir Starmer has once again promised to reduce immigration, but avoided setting specific targets. In a speech at Pinewood Studios, he outlined his plan for change, though immigration was absent from his 6 pledges. When pressed, the Prime Minister says the government would only tackle the issue with a serious plan, focusing on dismantling people smuggling gangs. Reform UK have quickly criticised the lack of measurable targets, but Sir Keir Starmer argues controlling borders is still a fundamental responsibility. The Archbishop of Canterbury says a head had to roll following a review into the Church of England's handling of abuse allegations. Speaking in the House of Lords earlier, he says that safeguarding in the Church of England has improved, but it is clear that he must step down in the wake of the report. His departing speech comes after it emerged the outgoing Archbishop will not take part in any public Christmas services this year, despite still being in post until January. A manhunt is underway in New York for a gunman who shot dead the head of one of America's biggest companies in the centre of Manhattan yesterday. Police have described the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson as targeted. New footage has emerged showing the suspect waiting for Thompson outside the Hilton Hotel before shooting him in the back. Detectives are now analysing the footage, along with DNA found at the scene, in the hopes of identifying the assailant. A discarded mobile phone, along with the suspect's escape route, is also being examined as investigators work to piece together the motive behind the pre-planned attack. Now, more extreme winter weather is heading for the UK this weekend, with the 4th named storm of the season, bringing winds of up to 18 miles per hour. Storm Dara will hit the west coast of Scotland to Cornwall and across Northern Ireland in the early hours of Saturday morning. A yellow warning also covers much of England, Wales and southern Scotland from Friday afternoon until early Sunday. Forecasters say that the storm could bring potentially dangerous, damaging gusts even, and travel disruption. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
OK, well, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pounds will buy you $1.1253 and €1.2067. The price of gold is at £2,067.85 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,333.17 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hi there and welcome to the latest updates from the Met Office for GB News. The next few days we're going to see several bouts of wet and windy weather, one through Thursday night, clearing then through Friday, and then another storm Dara waiting in the wings to hit the UK Friday night and into the weekend. That's going to bring even more significant disruption, but it's wet and windy out there for the rest of Thursday. A band of heavy rain moving through, followed by gusty winds overnight with wind gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour in places, eventually easing so that by dawn, clearer skies and lighter winds will lead to a chilly start to the day, temperatures around the mid-single figures. But it's a bright start, plenty of sunshine around first thing, just a few showers for northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, one or two into northwest England. But away from the showers, there'll be some sunshine as well, and this wind from the west-northwest will be feeling cold first thing Friday. Temperatures close to freezing across parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells, likewise for much of England and Wales. Chance of the odd shower for the far northwest, but otherwise it's a decent start to the day before Storm Dara arrives. And actually the first signs of that will be across Ireland as the rain turns up through the morning, and Northern Ireland sees that rain arriving by lunchtime with the winds picking up, the rain pushing then into West Wales, parts of the southwest and western Scotland, turning heavy as we close out the day. But in the east it stays bright, it stays dry, and it stays on the chilly side, 7 or 8 Celsius. Nevertheless, it's into Friday evening that it will turn particularly wet and windy across much of the UK. The heaviest rain sweeping through Northern Ireland into Scotland, where it will be falling as snow over the hills and then pushing through England and Wales overnight. But it's during Saturday that the strongest winds will arrive, 70 or even 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts in places.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Still some congestion on the westbound M62, so just towards Eccles at junction 12 for the M60 there. It's all due to an earlier bump. All lanes back open. Still seeing delays though. Congestion on the southbound M6 as well. Junction 13 down to 12 slow going. That's Stafford South down towards the Gailey turn off and 2 lanes coned off there because of a broken down vehicle. And there's one as well having a tide change in Hampshire. The southbound M3 has a lane shut and looking slow down towards Winchester at junction 10 towards the A31. Now in East Ham in London, High Street North is blocked by Tennyson Avenue and queuing. That's because of a collision. And a car fire westbound A27 in Brighton closed from the A23 through towards the A2038 and queuing.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
There you are. Welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson on the GB News, in for the lovely Martin Daubney, who's just sent you all a message. He says he's missing you all very much, and he's actually... Why are you not here if you're sitting watching, Martin? That's very lazy. He says he's going to bleach his hair and come in wearing high heels next week, because that's like I do. OK, Martin, thank you very much. If you want to see Martin wearing high heels, gbnews.com/you'll say, and he will actually do it. Martin, you can't get out of it now. Loads of you have been getting in touch about our Starmer's little speech this morning. Paul, because it was done at Pinewood Studios where they filmed Bond, and Starmer made a joke about being James Bond or something or other. And I asked for some of your puns. Paul says, Marxists are forever. I like that one. And the winter fuel allowance is not enough. Keep them coming. Oh, farm taker. See, I thought if you're going to do a moonraker pun, it'd be better to do the toolmaker pun. You know, toolmaker. He says that a lot. It's on my bingo card. I think it was he has to say it every single speech. In any case, if you want to get in touch, have some fun or have a whinge, very easy. gbnews.com/your say. Now, should we talk football? It's a big week for it. The Premier League is struggling with the public backlash over several players refusing to wear LGBTQ+ armbands and jackets due to their religious beliefs. OK, fine. Man United have been forced to scrap their rainbow jacket initiative after Nusayr Mazraoui cited his personal beliefs ahead of their game against Everton. The Football Association decided not to get involved in that particular case and have also decided to avoid taking action against Crystal Palace captain Mark Guéhi after he wrote "I love Jesus" on his rainbow armband, a move that is banned by the FA guidelines. OK, keeping up at the back there. Well, let's talk to sports broadcaster Aidan McGee for more on this. Aidan, lovely to see you on a weekday. Normally gets to play with you at the weekend. Oh, lovely treat. Aidan, now, a lot of people are getting their knickers in the twist about this, but, you know, it's Ipswich Town's Sam Morsey, a Muslim, Crystal Palace's Mark Guéhi, a Christian, Nusayr Mazraoui, Man United, another Muslim, not wanting to wear rainbow armbands or jackets. Why shouldn't they have that opinion? Why should they have to wear them?
Well, look, this is the problem, Dawn, when football decided 5 years ago to start meddling in politics. And I said at the time, at the previous company I was working for, this would end down a path of destruction. And I've been proved absolutely correct. The problem here with Manchester United, and indeed with a number of other clubs, is that they're caught between a rock and a hard place. Are they supporting the religious beliefs as they pertain to Islam, or are they doing that at the expense of the LGBTQ+ community? Now, the wider problem here, the wider context, Dawn, is if you look at the FA's website, they are sponsored by 32 commercial partners. There are a further 17 on the Premier League, which only governs one particular division. They are all in the grip of environment social governance, ESG as we understand it, and that's where this is being driven from. They are making stipulations on Premier League clubs, which of course which the Premier League is made up of, and governance organisations like the FA and the Premier League more specifically. and they're making them venture into politics when they don't want to go there. I've never met anybody at the FA or the Premier League in the last 20 years who knows the first thing about politics. They wouldn't profess to be political experts, and yes, they're being pushed down this road. Now, it's quite refreshing, actually, the FA. In some way, you could applaud them for pulling back, not pushing back, but pulling back on this by saying, I'm not getting involved. But in terms of the motivations behind this, I mean, Stonewall, many would consider them to be a reprehensible organisation, and yet the FA and the Premier League and the clubs, by extension, opted to get involved with them. Now, are Stonewall really trying to improve the game? Are they trying to improve the image of the game? Are they trying to do something to promote the game worldwide? I would say no. I'd say all they're interested in is the numbers garnered by the game, and that's what they're jealous of, and that's what they want to try and piggyback.
But why should players have to suffer for... Basically, it's virtue signalling, isn't it? Because, you know, the FA and the Premier League, they had no problem with the World Cup being played in Qatar, did they? Where sort of like homosexuality is legal, women are third-class citizens, and, you know, modern-day slaves died building those stadiums. So it's just virtue signalling. So I don't understand why the players should be the ones to suffer.
No, they're not suffering, but they've been placed in this position, an invidious position, as I would describe it, by the organisations. Now, I just hope the payback, the money they're getting for this, is worth it, because it's annoying a hell of a lot of fans on there. You only have to look at social media to see the backlash on this. And Mark Gurhey came out yesterday after the game, or on Tuesday night after the game, Ipswich, and showed solidarity with Sam Morsey by saying that actually religion is important to me. It's more important than any message that the armband can convey. And look, we know most footballers I know don't have the faintest interest in this kind of political what would you call it, these staging posts that are handed down to them by decree from the Premier League. They just want to get on and play football.
And exactly, and this also brings in the taking the knee thing. I mean, who was it? Wilfred Zaha of Crystal Palace. He was one of the few players brave enough to say, I'm not doing this. It's ridiculous. It's not going to help racism. It's just more divisive.
Well, it was interesting, Dawn, wasn't it? It was interesting, Dawn, wasn't it, that it was the handful of players that spoke out against it were mainly black players, actually, who took umbrage to this. And Black Lives Matter is a very poignant example, actually, because that was kind of downgraded. That was happening before every match. It was downgraded to high noons and holidays. And, you know, we only see it probably once a season now. I think that's the way we'll see it going with armbands now, because it doesn't show the game in a good light, and it annoys a lot of the people who put money into the game.
Absolutely, and it annoys a hell of a lot of the fans as well, and they put a lot of money into the game at the moment. Aidan McGee, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on the armband, the rainbow story in football. Thank you very much, Aidan McGee, for joining us this afternoon. Now, OK, Ian, just what do you think, actually? I mean, you know, I know lots of you go to football, lots of you have a go at me for being a West Ham fan. gbnews.com/your say. What do you feel about, should players wear them? Does it mean you're racist or homophobic if you don't take the knee, if you don't wear an armband that's got a rainbow on it? In any case, let me know what you're thinking. Now, in just a few minutes, we'll be live in Northern Ireland, seeing how some farmers are being forced to make their cows more climate friendly. We're talking bottom burps. Don't go too far. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
It seems that the younger generation's interest in literature is waning. Academics argue that educational policies have failed to encourage reading for pleasure, contributing to declining numbers of English literature students and a shift towards young adult books rather than classic novels. According to 2023 figures from the National Literacy Trust, the number of 8 to 18-year-olds who say they enjoy reading has sunk to its lowest level for almost 20 years, with a quarter fewer reading each day over that same time period. To share more with us about this topic, I'm joined now by the journalist Charlotte Lytton. Charlotte, welcome back. Lovely to talk to you again. Tell us your perspective on this issue. What is happening?
Well, speaking to academics, we can't deny, it seems, that there is a big problem here, and it starts right at school. As you read there, young children simply don't enjoy reading for pleasure as they did before. We can't deny that is also a massive part because of smartphones, because kids now are faced with all of these things vying for their attention. They just don't have to sit down and entertain themselves with a long book and nothing else as they did before. As we see from those figures with people going to study humanities at university, the decline is just going all the way because people simply are not interested in reading for pleasure as they were.
Do you get any feeling that education policy or that teachers are taking steps to counter this?
Well, there is a review of the curriculum going ahead right now, but school is a huge part of it. One of the things that has come up in this conversation is whether teachers now are dealing with crowd control, which means they can't simply encourage reading for pleasure because they're simply trying to get a hold of the students they have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Right, we're going to talk about bottom burps, as we used to have to call them when we were children. There is another rude word for it. I can't say that because I'll get told off. Now, a new feed supplement has promised to revolutionise cow farming in the UK, with the new substance reportedly able to reduce carbon emissions from cows by 27%. The practice has come under some criticism by organic suppliers and even one of the King's advisors for threatening to disrupt the natural process of farming, as the long-term effects of the substance on cattle are still not known. Now, I just want to read you this out because this is all right. OK, it's green. It's the Green Initiative, and this is from a brilliant hill farmer. It's called in Cornwall, actually, and a cow farmer. And he says, right, with all the chat going around about this, it's called Bovar, this substance, being fed to dairy cattle. We thought we'd take the chance to explain why we think our cows need to reduce their methane emissions. Our cows own 4 private jets, a seaplane and a helicopter. In 2022, our cows took 392 flights, averaging just 1 over a day. The cows' investments include travel, yachts, dwellings, responsible for over 6 million tonnes of CO2 emissions. Oh no, sorry, that's Bill Gates, who is one of the backers of this Bovar substance. So, I thought that was a very interesting point made that farmer. So, jet emissions versus cows' bottom burps. Anyways, let's talk to Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie, who's going to probably raise the tone of this debate for me. Doogie, good to see you. Go on, I've given you a tone, you can raise it, please.
Well, Bovar is a food additive. It's a methane-suppressing piece of pharmaceutical for animals. It is a silicone, synthetic silicone, that is now being added to certain farms to stop the cows breaking wind. That's the best way of putting it. And of course, this has been going on for some time. Many experiments have been taken on this. There was the kale back in the 80s and 90s, which tinged the milk, actually tasted it slightly. Then there was seaweed. That also tinged the milk slightly. And of course, farmers have been used pretty much to try things out on animals as they go along. And it is an expense.
Doogie, have we lost you? I think we have lost you indeed there. But we are big supporters of the farming industry here on GB News, and this is just part of it. Many farmers are saying this is not right. They're not happy with what they're doing, and we don't know the effects of it. And there is also talk of a boycott of this. And so I just read that. It was a social media post out from that farmer down in Cornwall. And it's ridiculous that we've got rich people like Bill Gates, who is is part of one of the backers of this substance, who is flying around the world in private jets and then forcing farmers to introduce this stuff because cows are passing wind, as we say. And we will try to get Doogie back for you, but it's just another rod for the farming industry to bear. In particular, the hill farmers, who we've seen a report today, who are often the poorest farmers in the country. Many, though, are cattle farmers, and they are going to be suffering even more because of this and because of the inheritance tax that they're still fighting for. It is actually a mess, and you really wouldn't want to be a farmer at the moment. But please let me know what you think about this at gbnews.com/your say. Will you be taking this substance? I mean, it's like, it's going from... We're not quite sure what it's going to do yet. It's supposedly perfectly safe. But will you be going out of your way to pay a little bit more to get a more natural product, more natural milk, butter, yoghurt, all of those things? It's an interesting one, is it? So gbnews.com/your say. Now, we do have to give a right of reply to the people who are producing this. It's a company called Arla who are responsible for the development of the new supplement, and they are saying Bovar has already been extensively and safely used across Europe, and at no point during the trial will there be any impact on the milk we produce, as it does not pass from the cow into the milk. That's what they say. Do you trust them? I mean, we've had lots of conspiracy theories going around recently. We went through the pandemic, didn't we, with all the vaccine stuff as well. But lots of you are getting in touch about farmers as well. Grumpy Granda, good afternoon, Grumpy. I haven't spoken to you for a while. Says, I'm hoping the farmers are going to give Starmer all the wind he can handle on Wednesday. I back them 100%. Well, that was yesterday, wasn't it? But yeah. Massive majority, it didn't actually make much difference. Lots of you also getting in touch about the rainbow armbands as well. Yes, sports people should not take the knee or wear a mask that dangers put rainbow bands supporting the LGBTQ. Plus, stay out of sport. Managers and relevant associations to discourage this evil attack on society using sports. Thanks. And that's from Robert. And PW says, I could not care less if a footy or rugby player is gay or straight. It's their ability to play the game that is more important. We don't need rainbow armbands or political statements. Let's just get on and enjoy sport for what it is. Keep those coming in. gbnews.com/your say. When you come back, we'll hear more about how the Prime Minister is trying to reset his first, 6 months. But first, let's get a look at what that weather's doing for you, shall we? Here it is.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest updates from the Met Office for GB News. The next few days we're going to see several bouts of wet and windy weather, one through Thursday night, clearing then through Friday, and then another storm Dara waiting in the wings to hit the UK Friday night and into the weekend. That's going to bring even more significant disruption, but it's wet and windy out there for the rest of Thursday. A band of heavy rain moving through, followed by gusty winds overnight with wind gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour in places, eventually easing so that by dawn, clearer skies and lighter winds will lead to a chilly start to the day, temperatures around the mid-single figures. But it's a bright start, plenty of sunshine around first thing, just a few showers for northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, one or two into northwest England. But away from the showers, there'll be some sunshine as well, and this wind from the west-northwest will be feeling cold first thing Friday. Temperatures close to freezing across parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells, likewise for much of England and Wales. Chance of the odd shower for the far northwest, but otherwise it's a decent start to the day before Storm Dara arrives. And actually the first signs of that will be across Ireland as the rain turns up through the morning, and Northern Ireland sees that rain arriving by lunchtime with the winds picking up, the rain pushing then into West Wales, parts of the southwest and western Scotland, turning heavy as we close out the day. But in the east it stays bright, it stays dry, and it stays on the chilly side, 7 or 8 Celsius. Nevertheless, it's into Friday evening that it will turn particularly wet and windy across much of the UK. The heaviest rain sweeping through Northern Ireland into Scotland, where it will be falling as snow over the hills, and then pushing through England and Wales overnight. But it's during Saturday that the strongest winds will arrive, 70 or even 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts in places.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on
The latest GB News travel.
I'm Jules Buckley. Good afternoon. There's queues for the westbound M62 towards Eccles at 12. It follows an earlier collision. Heading up towards there for the M60, very slow on the clockwise side. Eastbound A14 at the Milton interchange, junction 33. All the traffic being held to sort a collision out. And the same story, anti-clockwise in the M25. Traffic on stop before Watford at 19. A spillage there causing queues. Delays in the clockwise M25 roadworks 22 to 23 towards South Mims, and then the M4 westbound, firstly in Berkshire, Maidenhead at 8 to Wokingham at 10, a lane shut for a breakdown that's causing queues, and a previous collision just west of 43 Clandarcy means delays back on towards the top end of the Britain Ferry Bridge towards Swansea. All lanes open, still queuing westbound though. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Dawn Neeson on GB News, Britain's news channel, in for the lovely Martin Daubney, who's probably off doing his Christmas shopping or something or other. It's 4 o'clock, and I hope you're having a wonderful day out there. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. We are broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. And here's what we've got in store for you today. Sir Keir Starmer promises to transform Britain's streets as the Prime Minister attempts to crack down on neighbourhood crime. But will more bobbies on the beat help save the government's stuttering popularity? And more working farmers than previously predicted could be hit by the changes to inheritance tax in yet another to blow to British agriculture. Hill farmers are just the latest, and these are the poorest in the community, to call on the government to change course, but have their cries fallen on deaf ears. And then this mysterious story, it's straight out of a film, isn't it? The New York manhunt for the gunman behind the killing of a major American businessman picks up today, with police continuing to track the suspect. We'll have the latest on the chase as we get it. And let's talk footy. It's a big week for it. The FA are under fire from supporters groups following several players choosing to not wear rainbow armbands and jackets. We'll get stuck into that and so much more throughout the show. So thank you for joining me. Really appreciate your company this afternoon, especially so close to Christmas, and it's lovely, all festive in the studio. We've got the trees, we've got jingles. I love the jingles. And obviously you're all ready, aren't you? You're like me, you've done everything. No, not a thing, not even written a card. But this show is all about you and your views, and everything we're talking about today you can get involved in, or anything you want to chat about, even if it is just Christmas. It's really simple to get involved. gbnews.com/your say. Now, before we get cracking, let's let Cameron Walker get cracking with those news headlines for you.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 4. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. Now, the French Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, has resigned after his government was ousted in a no-confidence vote, the first since 1962. 331 MPs backed the motion, sparked by his use of presidential powers to push through a controversial €60 billion budget without a vote. Despite the resignation, he will remain in office until a successor is appointed. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, now faces the challenge of selecting a new Prime Minister from within a divided parliament. Macron is set to address the nation this evening. Sir Keir Starmer has once again promised to reduce immigration, but avoided setting specific targets. In a speech at Pinewood Studios earlier on, he outlined his plan for change, though immigration was absent from his 6 pledges. When pressed, the Prime Minister said the government would only tackle the issue with a serious plan, focusing on dismantling people smuggling gangs. Reform UK has quickly criticised the lack of measurable targets, but Sir Keir argues controlling borders is still a fundamental responsibility.
For 14 years, we had an arbitrary number under the previous government. They said it was a hard cap. It wasn't hard, and it wasn't a cap. The net result of their deliberate policies was that migration went up 4 times, staggering those figures of last year. So we will not be following that approach. We're going to do this in a serious way to take migration down. And I think that's what the British public want, a serious plan to ensure we've got control of our borders.
2 Romanian nationals have been charged after an Iranian journalist was stabbed outside his home in Wimbledon. Nadito Badia, who's 19, and George Stainer, who's 23, were arrested in Romania yesterday. They are each charged with wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm and wounding after Peria Zerati was knifed in the leg on the 29th of March. Both defendants have now appeared in a Romanian court for the start of extradition proceedings. The Archbishop of Canterbury says a head had to roll following a review into the Church of England's handling of abuse allegations. Speaking in the House of Lords, he says that safeguarding in the Church of England has improved, but it is clear that he must step down in the wake of the report. His departing speech comes after it emerged the outgoing Archbishop will not take part in any public Christmas services this year, despite being in post until January.
The reality is that there comes a time, if you are technically leading a particular institution or area of responsibility, where the shame of what has gone wrong, whether one is personally responsible or not, must require a head to roll. And there is only, in this case, one head that rolls well enough.
One of 2 teenagers convicted of murdering the 26-year-old Brianna Jai has had a bid to challenge the length of his sentence dismissed at the Court of Appeal. Eddie Ratcliffe, who's 17, was detained for life with a minimum term of 20 years in February this year for the murder, along with co-defendant Scarlett Jenkinson, who received a minimum term of 22 years. Brianna was stabbed 28 times with a hunting knife during the fatal attack in Linear Park near Warrington in February last year. The Chancellor is still facing pressure to reconsider inheritance tax changes for farmers, despite a Conservative motion to scrap them being rejected in the Commons. MPs voted 339 to 181 against the motion, but backbenchers insist they won't break their word to rural voters. The proposed policy would impose a 20% tax on farms worth over £1 million. Farmers and the union NFU are concerned that most farmers will be affected. Now, a new weight loss jab, Mounjaro, will be available on the NHS in England from March, but it could take up to 12 years for everyone eligible to get it. The drug recommended for people with severe obesity and at least one related health issue will initially be offered to those under specialist care. Concerns over overwhelming the NHS services mean a phased rollout with just 250,000 people expected to benefit in the first 3 years. NICE says the decision was necessary to protect vital services, but patients' groups are frustrated by the lengthy wait. More guidance on how GPs will manage the rollout is expected next year. And more extreme winter weather's heading to the UK this weekend, with the fourth named storm of the season bringing winds of up to 80 miles an hour. Storm Dara will hit the west coast of Scotland to Cornwall and across Northern Ireland in the early hours of Saturday morning. A yellow warning also covers much of England, Wales and southern Scotland from Friday afternoon until early Sunday. Forecasters say that the storm could bring potentially damaging gusts and travel disruption. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome back. Thank you very much, Cameron. Now, as his popularity, it's not Cameron's, as his popularity continues to tumble, Sir Keir Starmer has today been unveiling more details of his plan for change as he looks to reset his government sort of 5 months after taking charge, but whoever.
And this is a big job. Prisons overflowing. The NHS on its knees. A £22 billion black hole in our public finances. Which, to put that in context, is nearly half of what we spend on defence of our country. Now, I don't want to use that as an excuse. I expect to be judged on my ability to deal with it. And the work of change has begun.
Change, just crossing that one off on my Keir Starmer bingo card. I hope you were playing along at home. The Prime Minister based his speech around Labour's 5 missions, and amongst his pledges were a promise to ensure every neighbourhood has a named police officer in their community to deal with local issues, and a further promise to reduce both legal and illegal immigration. But he stopped short of putting a figure on it. Let's cross live to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, for more on these plans. Olivia, lovely to see you. Olivia, what did you make of what you had to say today?
Well, the very fact that the Prime Minister was doing a reset speech just 5.5 months into his time in office is worth comment by itself. It shows just how much the Prime Minister's popularity ratings have plummeted since the general election. He won a majority similar to the majority that Tony Blair won back in 1997, but obviously it's not played out in the same way. The speech today seemed to be an attempt to reset the course from the election pledges. Over the course of the election, Keir Starmer deliberately kept his promises very vague. He wanted to get as big a coalition as possible, and he perhaps understandably didn't want to pin himself down before he was in office. He now feels as though he's got to be a little bit more specific about some of those targets, or risk commentators saying that he has failed on them. So in quite a lot of these instances throughout the speech today, he was sort of drilling down, trying to finesse some of the things that he said during the general election campaign. Now, in a few of those cases, it felt actually a little bit as though he was watering down some of the pledges that he made during the election. He talked about raising real household income. Well, that's all very well, but the specific target during the general election campaign was to make Britain the fastest growing country in the G7. That seems to have gone a little bit by the wayside now in favour of this much more sort of malleable target. Then we had ensuring that 75% of children are school ready by reception. Well, it's already at about 67%, and you would expect, as the effects of lockdown begin to wear off more and more, that number to go up a little bit too. So some of these targets actually seem quite unambitious. That said, I remember sitting in Rishi Sunak's speech right at the beginning of 2023, where he laid out his 5 plans for the country, and he told voters to judge him based on whether he delivered on those plans. Lots of us journalists said there that he too was being unambitious, that interest rates were going to fall anyway, that inflation was going to fall, etc. But actually, Rishi Sunak didn't really achieve any of those 5 goals, apart from perhaps on the economy. And many people argue that's why the general election was so disastrous for the Conservatives. So it's interesting to see that the Prime Minister now is taking such a similar tack.
It is interesting, isn't it? And it's 6 milestones, but none of these milestones mentioned immigration specifically at all, did it?
Well, no, and there were 2 glaring omissions, actually, I thought, from those 6 milestones. No mention at all of immigration. Now, why is that? One reason, of course, is that it's very, very difficult for a Prime Minister of any colour, of any party, to make a dent in immigration. As Rishi Sunak learnt, to his horror, really, he did a lot of work on trying to stop the boats, but it is very, very difficult to do. It seems as though Keir Starmer perhaps might want to back away from that in order to sort of keep his reputation clean. This is what our political editor, Chris Hope, asked him at the press conference today.
For 14 years, we had an arbitrary number under the previous government. They said it was a hard cap. It wasn't hard, and it wasn't a cap. The net result of their deliberate policies was that migration went up 4 times, staggering those figures of last year. So we will not be following that approach. We're going to do this in a serious way to take migration down. And I think that's what the British public want, a serious plan to ensure we've got control of our borders.
So we hear about a serious plan, but we don't still get any detail on what exactly that plan is. The Prime Minister talks about tackling the problem upstream. He talks about smashing the gangs. Well, of course, the previous government tried to do that, and it's easier said than done. These aren't sort of the gangs that you see on an ITV crime drama. There's not sort of one member who you can take out there. Amorphous gangs moving up and down the channel all the time. Really, really difficult for the Prime Minister.
I mean, just quickly, Olivia, I mean, notoriously, impact assessments haven't been done with winter fuel allowance or the farmer's inheritance tax. There were lots of words used today, but I didn't get that much detail on whether any of this has actually been properly costed out and when it's going to start happening.
Well, exactly. I mean, the Prime Minister says that he wants people to judge him on whether he's delivered on these goals by the spring of 2029. So he's given himself a bit of a runway to try and achieve some of these more difficult targets. The thing about immigration is just it's going to keep biting away at him. And I think there are 2 problems. Firstly, as I say, it's not an easy problem for any Prime Minister to address. But secondly, the Labour Party is split on the issue. There are Labour MPs, many of whom took over Conservative constituencies, who are deeply worried about immigration and are very worried too that Reform are going to get in there and perhaps take their seats at the next election. Meanwhile, there are other Labour MPs, particularly in London, in urban seats, who think that actually trying to control the borders isn't something that a Labour Party should be doing at all. So the Prime Minister is really divided there, while at the same time trying to do something which is, you know, almost impossible.
Olivia, thank you very much. Olivia will be back later with us with a very, very special announcement. Thank you very much, Olivia. We'll see you later. OK, now let's see where we're going. Now, throughout the day, we have been hearing your views on the government's new targets. And we can now head to Grimsby, where we've sent the very lovely Emily Carver, who has been speaking to the local community about the big issues affecting them.
Well, thank you very much, Dawn. Yes, I've been in Grimsby all day, and it is clear from talking to residents and from wandering the streets that there are issues here. It's been in the press recently because of the high levels of unemployment in some areas, and also that life expectancy that's quite a bit lower than in other areas of the country, particularly in some of the most deprived areas around here. But I've been talking to local residents, and there's also quite a lot of positive things that are going on here. A lot of people working to get businesses up and running, to turn some of those boarded up shops into vibrant retailers and cafes and restaurants and everything else. So I'm delighted to be here with Mark Webb, who is a local business person, managing director of, oh goodness me, I've just forgotten the name. Thank you very much indeed. And also you're involved, a founding member of the 2025 group. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do with this group?
Yeah, sure. The 2025 group, pretty much as you say, this town faces challenges, I think pretty much like any town does up and down the country. And a group of business people who have got a lot invested in this area got together and said, look, we can either just sit down and let all the negative talks about what's happening in this town take over, or we can start focusing on the other side of the coin, because there is another side of the coin. There's people investing their time, their businesses and their money into growing this town, bringing it back up to where it needs to be. And, you know, there's a lot of local businesses who have got families here who really want to see this town thrive. And that's what the 2025 group was set up for, to focus on that. We talk only about things that are actually happening in this town. So we can go out with confidence and say, you might say there's nothing happening and it's hopeless. We've got evidence to show that it isn't hopeless and things are happening.
That's true, because I was speaking to a reverend earlier today, and she deals with a lot of people who are down and out, who perhaps are dependent on welfare for one reason or another, have been unemployed for years. And she said to me that sometimes when people do turn their lives around, they move out of the area. So part of what you're doing is trying to encourage people to stay here, to set up their businesses here and employ people here and create wealth, I guess.
Of course. And, you know, we mustn't miss out on the idea that that is actually happening now. Every year in this borough, in North East Lincolnshire, there are over 600 new businesses that start up. Now, that fares well in comparison with the national picture. We are an entrepreneurial area. There are so many people who don't just sit there and go, it's all hopeless and it's all terrible. There are so many people who are putting their savings and their futures on the line to make something of this town. You only have to look around and speak to people who frequent here and any part of town to know there's a good reason to build this town, to make it hopeful, because there are a lot of people willing it to work and who really want to be part of that.
Yeah, and so much of it's about the mood music, right? If you create a sort of positive mood around a town and around where people are, people do believe that they can crack on somewhere. But Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, he delivered a speech today and he spoke about how he wants to raise living standards. But a lot of small business people deeply concerned about some of the things in the budget, particularly tax rises and more regulations on workers' rights and that sort of thing. I mean, how worried are the retailers you speak to and the business people around here?
Well, I think nobody takes on extra costs without having a grumble about it. We'll all do that. There's a balance to be struck. The increases in national insurance, the increases in minimum wage, they're all things that we need to deal with as a business, as small businesses. And, you know, we've been faced with a lot over the last 5 or so years and things to overcome. So it's not welcome, but at the same time, we're a resilient bunch. We didn't build a business based on the fine lines between what the economists say and don't say. We've taken knocks like this before. So we're up for it. We're up for the challenge. And most people I speak to, they want to see people's standards of living. They want to see the minimum wage go up. But if I had a message for Keir Starmer, it would be stop peddling the bad, and the media, I may say, stop peddling the bad news and let's talk about what can be done. How can we support local small businesses? I mean, look, a town like ours, it's the same up and down the country. 60% of the adults employed in Grimsby in North East Lincolnshire are employed by small and medium enterprises. They are the backbone of the economy. They are the ones that someone needs to look at and say, how can we get out the way? How can we make it easy for people to create jobs? That's what I want them to do.
Well, do you know what? I think that's a very, very positive thing to say, and I think Keir Starmer probably should listen to you on that. It's all about a positive narrative for this country that people can get behind, small businesses and everyone else for that matter. Mark Webb, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come on GB News. Really, really appreciate it. So there, some positivity in Grimsby. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not grim up north. Lots of things going on. Back to you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Emily. That's Emily Carver for us there in Grimsby. And you know, one thing I really like about GB News is that we do get out and we talk to people. It's not about the Westminster bubble. It's not about journalists interviewing journalists who happen to live in Islington. It is about talking to real people out there. And that was a lovely, positive report there, because people dismiss places like Grimsby and Blackpool and Clacton in Essex. But these people have got lives, they're real people, and they need help, but they are fighters as well. OK, thank you very much, Emily. Now, up next, we head over to New York to get the latest on this weird story. The ongoing manhunt for the killer of an American businessman. Mysterious. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akweer. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The way in which children are being driven online because we're not taking them seriously offline. And what we're tending to do is seeing the problems entirely on the social media, forgetting the fact that we've given up on children being able to work independently and play independently outdoors. We've basically created a world where the digital bedroom has become this go-to area for a lot of young kids. We've given up on old-fashioned parenting, where we try to cultivate their resilience. And now we blame everything, all the problems that occur online. You have to remember that if you take something like bullying, bullying doesn't have to only take place online. It happens all the time, offline, in everyday life. But yet we only see the problem on the social media, and there's this obsession with the social media where every single problem that afflicts childhood is blamed on it. And that distracts us from actually understanding what we're doing wrong with children. So for me, and I hate when I see children with digital technology, when I see them with smartphones. I'm not a fan. I'm much more concerned about the fact that parents use their digital phones when they're having dinner with their kids and giving very bad examples in relation to that. But the real problem, it seems to me, is offline, and that's why we got to crack the issue. So for me, the banning issue is entirely a headline-grabbing political gambit. And I think that we should be much more focused on the real problems rather than delude ourselves that anything will improve.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Very much. I'm Dawn Neeson and this is GB News. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Really enjoying your company. And Martin sends his love. He's off doing his Christmas shopping or whatever boys do. Actually, I think he's watching the show. Hi, Martin. Let's say hello. He's missing you in any case. Right, now, the strange story, OK. The CEO of the largest private insurer in the US has been shot and killed in New York City. Oh, it's like something out of a movie, it really is. Brian Thompson was killed outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, with the New York Police Department initiating a manhunt for the killer. The gunman's identity remains a mystery, as CCTV footage showed that the individual was wearing a face mask, and the motive for the attack is still unknown. We can speak now with former NYPD detective Felipe Rodriguez. Felipe, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Now, this is, for us over here in London, we don't have this sort of thing. It's a very strange story. It does sound like a movie plot. Can you bring us up to date on what's happening?
Well, at this moment, believe it or not, the NYPD detectives were able to, continually, what we do is call a canvas, going building by building, and they actually were able to pull a photo without the individual having on a mask. And it looks like a lot more information has been forthcoming now. The ammunition that he used, the actual bullet casings, had something very cryptic written on it. It said deny, depose, and defend. And they're saying these could be attributed to the insurance industry and when they try to stonewall paying out claims to recipients.
So this was a brazen, targeted attack, first thing in the morning, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very early in the morning, and at that time it was, in like almost mid-20s, 30 degrees, so early in the morning. And we showed how this individual, the gunman, was laying in wait and just hanging around for quite a while. And the moment that he did see him, it was something almost, like you said, something out of a Jason Bourne movie. He immediately proceeded to go towards him and start shooting.
I mean, we know the victim, according to his wife, Brian Thompson's 50s, his wife, she says that he had been receiving death threats as well.
And it's something, you know what, we keep questioning in the investigation. How is it that the CEO of one of the largest, the largest healthcare, company in the world at this time, or in the U.S., didn't have some sort of executive protection, or even a retired law enforcement officer, acting as his driver that's armed. So it's very out of the norm for something like this to happen to such a high-level executive.
And it sounds like the shooter, as you call them in America, was very professional. I mean, even when the gun jammed, he still carried on. It was very cool. It's like a professional hitman.
Yeah, it was very smooth, the way he was able to clear those jams. I'm a firearms instructor for numerous years, and, he did that in a very methodical manner. And actually, I'm dying to see when we recover this firearm, because everybody keeps saying that it was a jam. It could have been the fact that we do have some sort of firearm called a B&T Station 6 firearm, and it's actually made to suppress the noise of a discharge of a gun. And it could have been that type of firearm, and he just, he was able to use it in a very highly executed manner.
And the person, I mean, seems to have just disappeared without trace now. Anyone any closer to finding out who he is and where he's gone?
Well, once again, thank God the detectives were able to now, this happened in Midtown, so they were able to canvass the area diligently, and they worked their way up to the upper part of Manhattan, which is a couple of miles away, and they were able to actually get 1 or 2 good solid pictures of his face. So at this point, they were able to get a better identification, and hopefully now with biometric, equipment, we'll be able to ID him soon.
Right, incredible story. Thank you very much for joining us, Felipe Rodriguez, former NYPD detective, on the assassination, a hit, basically, of the healthcare CEO in New York. Amazing story. If we do get any more, we'll certainly bring you up to date on that one. Now, I love these. I absolutely adore these. During Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country. Each day, they have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season. Here's today's for you.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 5.
Hi, it's Josh from the Send, UK and Ireland. Do you feel you need renewal in your life? Imagine a barren garden in winter, its branches appearing lifeless. Yet with spring, life bursts forth. Blossoms bloom and the garden transforms into life. The prophet Isaiah speaks of the branch of the Lord as a beautiful and glorious vision of renewal. Christmas is like spring for our souls. It's a time when God, through Jesus, brings life to what feels barren within us. Perhaps this year has left us tired, even hopeless. Yet the message of Christmas is that renewal is possible. Like a gardener, God nurtures us, planting seeds of hope and life and peace and love through Jesus. Let this season be your call to renew again. What in your life needs God's renewal today? Merry Christmas.
Oh, I do absolutely adore them. I've got one a day and they are so uplifting, and, in the dark days, literally of winter, and the dark days of where we are in the world at the moment, I just think they're wonderful. I hope you're enjoying them too. And I love that Merry Christmas message. Now, you can see all our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by visiting gbnews.com/Advent. And I would recommend it because they are incredibly uplifting. Now, there's still loads more to come on today's equally uplifting show between 5 o'clock, including MasterChef co-host John Turode finally addressing the ongoing Greg Wallace scandal. But first, let's get the news headlines with Cameron Walker.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 4:31. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer has once again promised to reduce immigration, but avoided setting specific targets. In a speech at Pinewood Studios earlier today, he outlined his plan for change, though immigration was absent from his 6 pledges. When pressed, the Prime Minister says the government would only tackle the issue with a serious plan, focusing on dismantling people smuggling gangs. Reform UK, however, has quickly criticised the lack of measurable targets. But Sir Keir Starmer argues that controlling borders is still a fundamental responsibility. The French Prime Minister Michel Barnier has resigned after his government was ousted in a no-confidence vote, the first since 1962. 331 MPs backed the motion, sparked by his use of a presidential power to push through a controversial €60 billion budget without a vote. Despite the resignation, he will remain in office until a successor is appointed, a challenge for the French president due to a very divided parliament. Emmanuel Macron is set to address the nation this evening. A couple whose 3-year-old son was found buried in a garden after they opted out of society and set up their own, and I quote, kingdom, has been convicted of causing or allowing his death through neglect. Jurors unanimously convicted Tai and Niyama Yashra Yala after hearing how they kept the body of Abiya in their bed for 8 days after he died from a respiratory illness worsened by a restricted vegan diet, which caused severe malnourishment, rickets, anemia and stunted growth. The couple then embalmed and buried the toddler in an 80-centimetre deep grave in their back garden in Birmingham at the start of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. The couple were remanded in custody and will be sentenced next Thursday. The Archbishop of Canterbury says a head had to roll following a review into the Church of England's handling of abuse allegations. Speaking in the House of Lords, he says that safeguarding in the Church of England has improved, but it is clear that he must step down in the wake of the report. His departing speech comes after it emerged the outgoing Archbishop will not take part in any public Christmas services this year, despite still being in post until January. And more extreme weather's heading for the UK this weekend, with the 4th named storm of the season bringing winds of up to 80 miles an hour. Storm Dara will hit the west coast of Scotland to Cornwall and across Northern Ireland in the early hours of Saturday morning. A yellow warning also covers much of England and Wales and southern Scotland from Friday afternoon until early Sunday. Forecasters say the storm could bring potentially damaging gusts and travel disruption. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest updates from the Met Office for GB News. The next few days we're going to see several bouts of wet and windy weather, one through Thursday night, clearing then through Friday, and then another storm Dara waiting in the wings to hit the UK Friday night and into the weekend. That's going to bring even more significant disruption, but it's wet and windy out there for the rest of Thursday. A band of heavy rain moving through, followed by gusty winds overnight with wind gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour in places, eventually easing so that by dawn, clearer skies and lighter winds will lead to a chilly start to the day, temperatures around the mid-single figures. But it's a bright start, plenty of sunshine around first thing, just a few showers for northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, 1 or 2 into northwest England. But away from the showers, there'll be some sunshine as well, and this wind from the west-northwest will be feeling cold first thing Friday. Temperatures close to freezing across parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells, likewise for much of England and Wales. Chance of the odd shower for the far northwest, but otherwise it's a decent start to the day before Storm Dara arrives. And actually the first signs of that will be across Ireland as the rain turns up through the morning, and Northern Ireland sees that rain arriving by lunchtime with the winds picking up, the rain pushing then into West Wales, parts of the southwest and western Scotland, turning heavy as we close out the day. But in the east it stays bright, it stays dry, and it stays on the chilly side, 7 or 8 Celsius. Nevertheless, it's into Friday evening that it will turn particularly wet and windy across much of the UK. The heaviest rain sweeping through Northern Ireland into Scotland, where it will be falling as snow over the hills and then pushing through England and Wales overnight. But it's during Saturday that the strongest winds will arrive, 70 or even 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts in places.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Queues in Glasgow on the M8 heading westbound around Townhead at junction 15. A breakdown means very slow going and partially blocked. Clockwise M60 towards junction 24, that's Denton Island. A lane shut for a collision. Westbound M62 still slow towards the M60 towards Eccles at 12 following an earlier collision there. All lanes are back open though. Cambridge, the southbound M11 before Cambridge South at junction 11 for the A10. A lane shut. Queues for emergency repairs. The snake back now towards the Cloverleaf interchange. That's junction 14. And still slow in the roadworks this afternoon on the clockwise side of the M25. Lane closures in place. That from St Albans at junction 22 heading through to South Mims at junction 23. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Daubney, and this is GB News. I'm standing in for Martin. I think he's off doing his Christmas shopping or something. But I hope you've got a nice martini on the go. Shaken, not stirred, obviously. Because we were talking about Keir Starmer earlier on and how he was making this speech at Pinewood Studios, which is where they filmed Bond. And he himself made a joke about Bond. And I said, right, OK, well, let's have a laugh with this, because you've got to have a laugh these days, haven't you? Come up with some Bond-themed Bond titles for films that you think suit Keir Starmer. You're really good on this one. Lucia says The Living Nightmare. Get that one. Jules also says Living Daylights Robbery. And Paul, I'm afraid I can't read that out right. That'd get me in so much trouble. But it starts off with Thunderball. You can all insert your own pun after this. But my favourite message so far is from William. Good afternoon, William. And this is about the GB News Advent, our messages every day we're giving you. William says, I love these Christmas messages in this Christian country. Merry Christmas. Love that. Thank you so much. Please do keep them all coming in. gbnews.com/your say. And I promise I'll read as many out as I possibly can. The funny ones, the emotional ones, the angry ones, whatever you want to talk about. Now we're going to talk about our MasterChef again. MasterChef host John Turode has forwarded his apologies to anyone who has appeared in the show in the wake of the misconduct allegations against his co-presenter Greg Wallace. The BBC presenter has been involved with the show alongside Wallace for nearly 20 years. Can't believe it's been going on that long. But promised fans that he will continue to be part of it despite his co-host leaving the programme following the launch of an investigation into his behaviour. And we believe the Christmas special has indeed been cancelled. Right, OK, well, now let's talk to Managing Director of the PR agency Positive Profile, Henry Gewanta. Henry, thank you very much for joining us today. Now, I've got lots of friends who are former tabloid journalists who have gone into crisis management. Now, the one job I wouldn't want to be doing at the moment is trying to firefight and save Greg Wallace's reputation. Where does he go from here?
Well, it's quite obvious he's in some serious trouble right now. I think where he went wrong, well, aside from his alleged behavior, of course, was to come out punching. And I'm sure you weren't too keen on his remarks about women of a certain age.
How very dare you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're still too young to qualify for that. But I would have thought that the obvious thing he should have done was to apologize immediately. Since he hasn't done that, I mean, he's sort of tried to now, but it's a bit late. I think he's just really got to go into Purdah for a while and keep his head down. He needs to apologize. I mean, for any crisis, the usual best steps forward is you start by apologizing, you then try to explain what went wrong and why, and then what you're going to do about it to make sure it never happens again. He hasn't yet done those second two steps. So I think at some point, after a period of quiet contemplation, he needs to come back and explain why he went wrong, how he now realizes his serious errors, and how he's now a reformed character and will never do it again. I mean, that's what I would recommend if he hired me, but clearly he won't.
As I say, the person in charge of him must have woken up on Sunday morning when he posted that message about our women, middle-class women of a certain age. They're the only ones complaining. It's like, whatever you do not blame the alleged victims. Do not blame the women. Just don't do that. And then you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, my God, what has he done? So what advice would you give him? Like, just literally to say nothing, keep a low profile, and just stay away from social media?
Well, no, it depends. No, staying quiet, it's too late to just well, I mean, unless he wants to retire from public life permanently. But I think really forceful, forthright public apologies, a significant show of atonement for his actions is what's required. And I think he really just needs to say how terribly sorry he is, to show genuine contriteness for his actions and for his foolish remarks, and beg the forgiveness of the general public as well as the people who he's clearly upset terribly.
Do you think there is a way back for him, or do you think this is the end of his TV career? Obviously, Greg denies all the allegations, and we don't know the outcome of any inquiries that are ongoing. But do you think that there is a way back for him? People go, there's no smoke without fire.
He was an incredibly popular television presenter for, as you say, nearly 20 years. A convicted felon has just been reelected president of the United States. So I can't, Greg Wallace hasn't killed anybody. He's patted some bottoms inappropriately and so on and so forth. But he hasn't committed any serious crimes, certainly not 34 felonies. So I don't see why he couldn't rehabilitate himself over time.
Mm-hmm. So do you think we could see him in the jungle next year, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I think eating insects and vomit or whatever they have on that show for him might well do it. I mean, many other people who have been publicly disgraced have gone on that show and regained the hearts and minds of the general public. So who knows?
Indeed. Henry, thank you very much for joining us. That's Henry Juwenta, a positive profile agency in charge of handling crisis management for people that do things wrong. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. OK, now, in response to the allegations, lawyers representing Greg Wallace released this statement. The suggestion that Wallace, who has presented the popular BBC One cooking show alongside John Turode since 2005, engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature is entirely false. OK, now, in just a few minutes, we'll be going over to Northern Ireland to see how some farmers, we are supporting farmers here, are being forced to make their cows more climate friendly. Yes, we're back on bottom burps. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and you don't want to go too far. We'll see you soon.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, you know, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
Oh.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm ready. Welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. I'm standing in for the lovely Martin Daubney, who's off doing his Christmas shopping. But thank you for keeping me company. Really enjoying your comment. OK, I just want to read this one out, basically, because you might have missed it, but if you did, you didn't miss much. But Sir Keir Starmer gave a speech today with his 6 mission pledges, which followed on from his 5, or whatever he was doing last time. He's going to get down to a partridge in a pear tree very soon, I can tell you that much. But, and I genuinely have a Keir Starmer bingo card here. The only way I get through political speeches, right, any political speech, is just go through the bingo. And yes, it does, you know, tool maker, mum was a nurse, etc., etc. And this has just come in from Sharon. Hi, Sharon. She says, Dawn, you work for a newspaper. Well, not at the moment, I don't currently, but Dawn, you work for a newspaper. Could you get them to print Christmas Starmer Labour bingo cards for you? I think that's a really good idea, don't you? Would you play bingo? Keir Starmer bingo? It's really easy. I actually get a full house every time. Right, OK, now let's talk about farmers again, shall we? A new feed supplement has promised to revolutionise cow farming in the UK with a new substance reportedly able to reduce carbon emissions from cows by 27%. The practice has come under some criticism by organic suppliers and even one of the King's advisers for threatening to disrupt the natural process of farming, as the long-term effects of the substance on cattle are still not known. Now, joining me now, hopefully... Oh, we don't know. We are at some point going to go to Doogie Beattie, who is in Northern Ireland for us, he's been eaten by a cow. Cows don't eat people. No, cows don't eat people. But in response to this story, someone just earlier said, we're seriously worried about cows passing wind from their bottoms. And they sent me a current map of the planes just flying into and out from the UK. And it's like, seriously, we are worried about cows. But this additive is going to put in your milk and it is going to stop cows from passing so much wind. Honestly, where's my career going with this story? But it's going to stop cows from passing so much wind. And there is lots of debate about it and lots of people are very nervous about it and it is backed by a big industry. But are you going to go for it? There was one message came in earlier on. They said, bring back the old-fashioned milkman. where you actually could get proper milk. Oh, God, I remember that. Do you remember that? When you used to have someone come around the street with clinking milk bottles and you could buy your milk that way. We are still waiting to talk to Doogie Beattie in Ireland, but I don't think we're getting him yet. He really has been eaten by a cow. But we have been talking about farmers a lot today, and a lot of you are getting in touch about this subject because it is really, really getting to you. And it's like, you know, the latest story on this one today is that thousands of low-income farmers are going to face financial jeopardy as Labour continues to deny that vital funding. And this is a think tank today warning this. And they are saying that hill farmers in particular, who many are cattle farmers, are more at risk. They are basically, they're facing financial ruin because of the delays. And it said hill farmers, which produce much of the country's beef and lamb, are typically the lowest incomes, and they are going to be really at risk because of what the government is doing at the moment. Now, we have supported farming and the farming industry a lot on GB News, and I think now we can go to Doogie Beattie, who is with several cattle in Northern Ireland. Doogie, you haven't been eaten by a cow. No, you haven't. Doogie, OK, tell us more on this story. What's going on?
Well, it's strange that your last comment there was about milkmaid coming to the door. We'll all remember in the 70s and 80s when we used to get milk, the birds would pack through the top of it to get at the cream. Well, of course, that doesn't happen anymore because so much butter fat is taken out of the milk. And in fact, when I was in the parlour in the 80s and 90s, you know, I used to dip in a small churn and take it down to the house to use as milk. It only lasted 3 days. Now, of course, that milk is 3 days before it's processed, and it still has 5 days left on it on the shelf. And this is because, well, so much is being taken out of the milk for yoghurts, creams, milk chocolate, etc. But the farmers are still only getting paid so much for it. Now, Bovaer is a silicone synthetic additive that's added to food to make cows apparently less flatulent. And you've got to ask, humans are much more flatulent than animals. Will we all end up running about with meters on our underpants if we think of this? And actually joining me now is Sammy Hanna, who is a dairy farmer here. Sammy, things have been rough for you as it is.
Yeah, the margins are always getting squeezed tighter and tighter, and we don't need any more charges on our inputs.
And this is a repetitive cost. Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, it'll always land at the farmer's door to make up for the big companies that get their green and emissions lowered, and they're using us to do it.
Well, there you go. The farmer's not going to see profit of it. We're not going to see any better of it. We must say that there is no medical proof that this will do any harm to humans, but most definitely this greening situation, again, the consumer will end up paying for it.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Doogie. A silicone synthetic added to your milk. It doesn't sound like it's going to make your cuppa much tastier, does it? In response, a spokesman for Arla, who are the manufacturers, said of the new supplement, Bovaer has been already extensively and safely used across Europe, and at no point during the trial will there be any impact on the milk we produce, as it does not pass from the cow into the milk. Ooh, I'm not sure about that one. Any case, what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Would you go back to the old school milkman? When we come back, we'll have the latest on the Prime Minister's attempt to change Britain, as he promises to crack down on local crime and tackle the day. You've heard it all before. But before we get to that, let's go and get, well, the important thing, the weather. Let's see what that, and how's it going to affect the cows? That's what we want to know. We'll see you soon.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest updates from the Met Office for GB News. The next few days we're going to see several bouts of wet and windy weather, one through Thursday night, clearing then through Friday, and then another storm Dara waiting in the wings to hit the UK Friday night and into the weekend. That's going to bring even more significant disruption, but it's wet and windy out there for the rest of Thursday. A band of heavy rain moving through, followed by gusty winds overnight with wind gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour in places, eventually easing so that by dawn, clearer skies and lighter winds will lead to a chilly start to the day, temperatures around the mid-single figures. But it's a bright start, plenty of sunshine around first thing, just a few showers for northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, one or two into northwest England. But away from the showers, there'll be some sunshine as well, and this wind from the west-northwest will be feeling cold first thing Friday. Temperatures close to freezing across parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells, likewise for much of England and Wales. Chance of the odd shower for the far northwest, but otherwise it's a decent start to the day before Storm Dara arrives. And actually the first signs of that will be across Ireland as the rain turns up through the morning, and Northern Ireland sees that rain arriving by lunchtime with the winds picking up, the rain pushing then into West Wales, parts of the southwest and western Scotland, turning heavy as we close out the day. But in the east it stays bright, it stays dry, and it stays on the chilly side, 7 or 8 Celsius. Nevertheless, it's into Friday evening that it will turn particularly wet and windy across much of the UK. The heaviest rain sweeping through Northern Ireland into Scotland, where it will be falling as snow over the hills and then pushing through England and Wales overnight. But it's during Saturday that the strongest winds will arrive, 70 or even 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts in places.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Falkirk, the northbound M80 part blocked, junction 8 to Bannockburn at 9, queuing for a breakdown. The northbound M77 in Glasgow by junction 1 Dumbreck Road's queuing. A collision there means a lane out, and still queuing westbound for the M8 in Glasgow around Townhead at 15. Antrim County down the country-bound M1 Belfast at 1 towards junction 2, long queues. A collision there means a lane closure in place. Still slow on the southbound M6 around Crewe, 17 to 16 following an earlier breakdown. All lanes are back open. Southbound M11 around Cambridge before 11, queuing back to 14 for emergency repairs. That still has a lane closure in place. And the clockwise M25 St Albans to South Mims in the roadwork, slow going 22 towards junction 23.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock, golly gosh, on Thursday afternoon, and we are very, very, very close to Christmas. Welcome back to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. As the observant will have noticed, I'm not actually Martin Daubney. He's having a well-deserved rest today, so I'm keeping this seat warm for him. But he will be back next week. promised to wear high heels as well, so hold him to that one. Now, we are broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. And here's what we've got coming up for you. It's a Christmas cracker of a show. Well, apart from this bit. So Keir Starmer promises to transform Britain's streets as the Prime Minister attempts to crack down on neighbourhood crime. But will more bobbies on the beat help to save the government's stuttering popularity? And more working farmers than previously predicted could be hit by the changes to inheritance tax in yet another blow to British agriculture. Hill farmers are the latest sector to call on the government to change course, but have their cries, like the others, fallen on deaf ears? And New York police are continuing their manhunt for the gunman behind the killing of a major American businessman, with officers continuing to track the suspect. We'll have all the latest on that breaking story. And the FA are under fire from supporters groups following several players choosing not to wear rainbow armbands and training jackets. We'll get stuck into that story and so much more throughout this show. Oh, thank you for joining me this afternoon. I really appreciate your time and your company. I really love chatting to you. So please do keep those views coming in at gbnews.com/your say. All the subjects we're talking about, rainbow armbands, farmers, cows' bottom burps, as you heard in the last bit, and any Christmas stories you want to tell me as well, because we are going to be talking about alcohol soon too. It's very easy to get involved, your views, and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But before we get into all of that, let's get the news headlines with Cameron Walker.
Thanks, Dawn. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 5. I'm Cameron Walker in the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer has once again promised to reduce immigration, but avoided setting specific targets. In a speech at Pinewood Studios earlier today, he outlined his plan for change, though immigration was absent from his 6 pledges. When pressed, the Prime Minister said the government would only tackle the issue with a serious plan, focusing on dismantling people smuggling gangs. Reform UK have quickly criticised the lack of measurable targets, but Sir Keir Starmer argues controlling borders is still a fundamental responsibility.
For 14 years, we had an arbitrary number under the previous government. They said it was a hard cap. It wasn't hard, and it wasn't a cap. The net result of their deliberate policies was that migration went up 4 times, staggering those figures of last year. So we will not be following that approach. We're going to do this in a serious way to take migration down. And I think that's what the British public want, a serious plan to ensure we've got control of our borders.
French Prime Minister Michel Barnier has resigned after his government was ousted in a no-confidence vote, the first time since 1962. 331 MPs backed the motion, sparked by his use of presidential powers to push through a controversial €60 billion budget without a vote. Despite the resignation, he will remain in office until a successor is appointed. President Emmanuel Macron now faces the challenge of selecting a new Prime Minister from within a divided parliament. Macron is set to address the French nation this evening. Now, 2 Romanian nationals have been charged after an Iranian journalist was stabbed outside his home in Wimbledon. Nandito Badia, who's 19, and George Stana, who's 23, were arrested in Romania yesterday. They are each charged with wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm and wounding after Paria Zerati was knifed in the leg on the 29th of March. Both defendants have now appeared in a Romanian court for the start of extradition proceedings. One of 2 teenagers convicted of murdering 26-year-old Brianna Jai has had a bid to challenge the length of his sentence dismissed at the Court of Appeal. Eddie Ratcliffe, who's 17, was detained for life with a minimum term of 20 years in February this year for the murder, along with co-defendant Scarlett Jenkinson, who received a minimum term of 22 years. Brianna was stabbed 28 times with a hunting knife during the fatal attack in Linear Park, which is near Warrington, in February last year. The Archbishop of Canterbury says a head had to roll following a review into the Church of England's handling of abuse allegations. Speaking in the House of Lords, he said that safeguarding in the Church of England has improved, but it is clear that he must step down in the wake of the report. His departing speech comes after it emerged the outgoing Archbishop will not take part in any public Christmas services this year, despite still being in post until January.
The reality is that there comes a time, if you are technically leading a particular institution or area of responsibility, where the shame of what has gone wrong, whether one is personally responsible or not, must require a head to roll. And there is only, in this case, one head that rolls well enough.
NHS leaders are sounding the alarm as hospital admissions for flu surge, with daily cases more than quadrupling compared to last year. Health officials say a quademic of flu, COVID, neurovirus and RSV are straining the system. Experts are now urging millions to come forward for flu and COVID jabs to ease the burden even on hospitals. Now, a manhunt is underway in New York for a gunman who shot dead the head of one of America's biggest companies in the centre of Manhattan yesterday. Police have described the killing of United Healthcare boss Brian Thompson as targeted. New footage has emerged showing the suspect waiting for Thompson outside the Hilton Hotel before shooting him in the back. Detectives are now analysing the footage, along with DNA found at the scene, in hopes of identifying the assailant. A discarded mobile phone along the suspect's escape route is also being examined as investigators work to piece together the motive behind the pre-planned attack. And more extreme winter weather's heading to the UK this weekend, with the fourth named storm of the season, bringing winds of up to 80 miles an hour. Storm Dara will hit the west coast from Scotland to Cornwall and across Northern Ireland in the early hours of Saturday morning. A yellow warning also covers much of England and Wales and southern Scotland from Friday afternoon until early Sunday. Forecaster says that the storm could bring potentially damaging gusts and travel disruption. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Cameron. He does that rather well, doesn't he? As well as his other job as a brilliant royal correspondent. Now, as his popularity continues to tumble, not Cameron's, we're talking Keir Starmer again. It has been today unveiling more details of his plan for change, and he looks to reset his government.
And this is a big job. Prisons overflowing, the NHS on its knees, a £22 billion black hole in our public finances, which, to put that in context, is nearly half of what we spend on defence of our country. Now, I don't want to use that as an excuse. I expect to be judged on my ability to deal with it. And the work of change has begun.
Change. That was the one I was waiting for on my bingo card. When he was talking about the NHS, if he only said my mum was a nurse, I would have got a full house. I'm sorry. It's a thing. Now, the Prime Minister based his speech around Labour's 5 missions, and amongst his pledges were a promise to ensure every neighbourhood has a named police officer in the community to deal with local issues, and a further promise to reduce both legal and illegal immigration. But he stopped short of putting a figure on it. Well, probably wise. Let's cross live to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, for more on the Prime Minister's plans. Olivia! Yay! Olivia! Before we talk about Prime Minister's plans, I just want to mention your plans. It's your last day today, isn't it?
It is my last day. I'm off on maternity leave today.
Yeah.
Baby's due on Christmas Day, so...
Oh, brilliant. A Christmas baby. Oh, I love that. The best of luck and love from all of us. I mean, you are going to be a wonderful mum. Can't wait to find out all the news from you. But before you go, you've got to do some work, unfortunately. So, Keir Starmer, more pledges, more announcements. I mean, what's he said today?
So today he did this reset speech. It's worth noting first that it's quite unusual for a Prime Minister to feel the need to do a reset speech just 5.5 months into their first term in office. It is a reflection of just how low Keir Starmer's personal popularity ratings have gone, down to properly into the negative percentages, which is amazing when you consider that the size of his majority is comparable to what Tony Blair achieved in 1997. As for the substance of the speech, essentially what he was doing is drilling down a little bit on some of the promises that he made over the course of the election. During the election, he came up with these 5 pledges. Today, he came up with 6 missions, which were sort of consolidating some of those pledges. I say consolidating. In a couple of cases, it actually sounded as though he was watering down some of the rather vague promises that he made during the election campaign. So he talked about today improving disposable income for real households. Well, that is a noble goal, of course, but in terms of his economic promise, it's a little bit different to what he promised in the election, which was that Britain would be the fastest growing country in the G7. That pledge seems to have gone by the wayside. His decarbonisation pledge as well is a little bit weaker than it was during the election. He talked about a zero carbon economy by 2030. That's now a pledge to aim for 95%. So a couple of places where it did seem as though he was watering down some of those election pledges. The other thing to mention is the omissions from this speech today. The Prime Minister didn't mention immigration, which is fascinating in itself. Obviously, this is an issue which often comes top of the polls of what concerns people most, or at least very, very close to the top. Why didn't the Prime Minister mention it? Well, one reason, perhaps, is that it is really, really difficult to get some sort of immigration target and to stick to it. Rishi Sunak tried and learnt how hard it is to his peril. That's possibly one of the reasons why the Conservatives did so badly at the election and why Reform did so comparatively well. Another reason is that the Labour Party is pretty split on how to tackle the question of immigration or even whether to tackle it at all. There are certain ultra-progressive Labour MPs who don't think that controlling Britain's borders is something that a Labour Prime Minister should be doing at all. The other huge glaring omission was defence spending. Now, over the course of the election, Rishi Sunak said that if he were to be elected, he would raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Keir Starmer said that that would be his goal, but he didn't want to put a time or a date on when that would be achieved while he was still in opposition. He's now Prime Minister, and we still don't have a date or a timeline for that at all. So there are a couple of omissions, a little bit of watering down in this speech today, but we did see a bit more direction, a bit more meat on the bones of what the Prime Minister plans to do with his next 5 years in office.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much, summing it up wonderfully there. And the next thing you have to read out, hopefully, will be a nursery rhyme, which will be much more relaxing. Olivia Utley, thank you very much from everybody, and huge amounts of luck for the baby. Christmas Day baby, how wonderful. Olivia Utley, thank you very much. OK, now we can speak with the former police officer, Peter Williams, about what he thinks of what Keir Starmer has said about crime, which is one of the 6 milestones mentioned today. You know, halving serious violent crime, halving violence against women and girls, putting 13,000 bobbies on the beat by the time of the next election, all with £360 million funding. Doesn't quite sound enough to me. What do you make of what you heard Keir Starmer say about crime today?
Well, just to take one aspect of that in the neighbourhood policing, I certainly welcome that, and I think a lot of people will welcome that, including the public, because when we did implement neighbourhood policing, which is about 20 years ago now, it was to operate in accordance with the provisions of the Crime and Disorder Act. And the significance of that, Dawn, is the fact that it brings other agencies into the issue of neighbourhood policing. The police cannot control crime on their own. Everybody knows that. And we certainly did experience successes with this multi-agency approach in resolving problems at ward or neighbourhood level. And one benefit from it is the fact that there's enhanced visibility of the police, and that itself reduces the fear of crime amongst the public. And I think that will be welcomed. Also, there's no doubt, since we were forced to reduce neighbourhood policing teams, we have lost contact with the public, which has been, and there's been several issues linked to that, which have been key events, and of course the overriding concept, as you know, and I'm sure the viewers know, of policing in Britain is that we police by consent. So I very much welcome that announcement.
Do you think, to me, I mean, I haven't actually done the maths, but a £360 million fund doesn't sound, across all the police forces in the country, an awful lot of money to put all of these plans into action.
No, and I agree. And the figure in numerical number mentioned in terms of personnel is 13,000. And that's 13,000 by sort of the end of the Parliament, which is almost 5 years away. So it's an extremely modest commitment by the government. But what I think it will do, it will allow going forward chief constables, police and crime commissioners to be in a position where they can negotiate enhancements and improvements to those numbers with the Home Office, because at least the government is now recognising the value of neighbourhood policing, and of course it needs resourcing. Now, for the benefit of the viewers, a sort of typical or a well-resourced neighbourhood team will be an inspector, several sergeants, probably about 30 officers, supported by police and community support officers. They're crucial to this, special constables, and also volunteers. And if that's working, functioning well, the public notice the difference they did last time, particularly with the involvement of those other agencies, like the local authorities, as I mentioned previously.
Peter, I mean, I obviously going back quite a while now, but we did have a local Bobby on the beat. His name was PC Harding. I remember it to this day. And we also had local police stations. Do you think it should be part of the plan for Labour to reopen local police stations? I mean, I don't think any area hardly has one these days.
Well, I personally would welcome it, because the point I made earlier about the fact that we've become detached from the public. And I think that is one of the reasons, because people don't know if they've got a local police station anymore. There's no specific point of contact. They've lost that. And when you actually ring your local police force, you probably get a recorded message, which is like any other sort of call centre, which is extremely frustrating. Yeah. And eventually, if you do get through, it's probably to somebody who doesn't understand or have that local knowledge. And I think the role of local police stations, as you say, you could name your local officer. You knew exactly where your local police station was. On the other hand, which needs to be recognised, police crime commissioners have got to balance the police estate, and the police estate these days is expensive. But I would love to see the local police station being reopened and Bobbies on the beat, working out of that police station, who know the local area and have got that important ingredient, what I've mentioned, the local knowledge.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's former police officer Peter Williams for joining us on Keir Starmer's plans to, well, tackle crime in this country, part of one of his 6 milestones, which are part of 5 missions and a partridge in a pear tree, that he was on about today. Now, for the Conservative response to this, let's speak to the Shadow Policing Minister, Matt Vickers. Matt, thank you very much for... Are you there, Matt? Matt?
I am. Good evening.
There? Good evening. Matt, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Now, Matt, obviously we have now 6 milestones, 5 missions. I mean, to be fair, the Conservatives had missions as well. What did you make of what you heard today?
This is his 17th reset. It's disastrous. We're 5 months in. We've had the pledges, the priorities, the milestones, the millstones. Yeah, it's not going very well.
And what, in particular, with crime, which is your beat, no pun intended, a £360 million fund. It doesn't sound like that much money. Do you think that sounds realistic?
Well, the worrying thing about this is, so the last government, we committed to 20,000 more police on the streets. We committed to putting those police, and we did. There are now more police on the streets in the UK than ever before. Today is committed to 13,000 more, and actually it's not 13,000 more police. It's not 13,000 new police officers on our streets. It's special constables who are volunteers, and he's going to find them from somewhere. He's also going to repurpose police officers who are on the streets now. We talk about neighbourhood policing and response policing. So when you ring 999, it's those response police that he is going to take away from response policing and put into neighbourhood policing. It's all a bit of a swizz. The public want to listen to politicians, make real pledges and deliver on them. Saying there's 13,000 more police coming when there's just not, is completely, it undermines trust in the government and in politicians at large.
Matt, it has to be said that the Conservatives were responsible for cutting the numbers of police on our streets and also selling off some of those police stations that we were discussing earlier on. I mean, it's Keir Starmer that always says it's your fault, it's the Conservatives' fault, we're making up for 14 years of the mess you made. What would you say to that?
So the facts are, there are more police on the streets now in the UK than ever there were. We put 20,000 more on the streets. Last year, the Conservative government gave an additional uplift of 922 million to frontline policing. The Labour Party won't match that. They won't commit to matching that. That I know in my community, where I go out and knock on doors and speak to people, I know that has meant there's more police on the streets. I know that has meant that police bases are now open that weren't open before. But it's all about balance. We don't want people sat behind desks in police stations. We want them out catching criminals, engaging their communities. So yeah, I think, and crime's down. That's the biggest metric. Crime is down by around 50% over the last few years. That's the positive. That's what we want the police doing. The job of the policeman has changed in recent years. They now deal with some horrendous things. They deal with issues with people's mental health. They deal with a lot more in terms of missing persons. They deal with a lot more in terms of the terrible things that people do online. So you might not see them in the street as often as you might want to, but it's a fact. There's more than there's ever been.
OK, and that's Shadow Policing Minister Matt Vickers. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. OK, well, what do you think of this? I mean, do you feel confident? I mean, are you seeing more police officers on your streets? Do you know where your local police station is? Have you tried phoning to report a crime, or is it quicker just to put some hurty words on social media? Then they'll be around like a shot, won't they? Let me know what you think of all of those. gbnews.com/your say. Now, up next, we get the latest on the farmers fighting back against the government's changes to inheritance tax. Huge story, not going away. I'm Dawn Neeson on GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison-Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French. Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low.
And it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered-down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes, and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. You got a little sneak peek there. Sorry about that. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. I'm sitting in for the lovely Martin Daubney. Today he's having a well-deserved rest to get his baubles out or something or other. Thank you for joining me. Hope you're having a lovely... Sorry. Hope you're having a lovely day out there. Really appreciate your company. Now, the president of the National Farmers Union has vowed that farmers will fight the government's inheritance tax raid for as long as it takes, as many continue to fear the policy will spell the death of the family farm. This comes as a Conservative motion to block the so-called family farm tax was defeated in the House of Commons yesterday, with many rural Labour MPs voting in favour of the inheritance tax raid. Well, now we can talk with farmer Andrew Loftus. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Andrew, it's not really a shock that the debate was voted down yesterday by Labour, but they have a huge majority. What did you make of what you heard yesterday?
Well, I think it was good of the Conservatives to have the debate and show their support. I guess now we've got a record of exactly what each MP thinks, and they've gone through the lobby and they've backed the government, unfortunately, despite some of them having constituencies with lots of farmers, lots of rural voters. But we've got a record of them now, and we'll be targeting our efforts in those areas to make sure our voice is heard. I mean, where I live in North Yorkshire and south here in West Yorkshire, on the urban fringe, there's a lot of new Labour seats, but they still have a big farming community, and we will make sure our voice is heard there, because those MPs aren't listening and don't understand what they've done.
Andrew, the thing we forget all the time we have these debates about what we're talking about, that MPs we voted for to represent us, to represent our interests. So, you know, in your community there, when you go to your local MPs and you say, you've got to start doing this for us, what response do you actually get? Or do they just not take any notice?
I just don't think they have links in or focused on the rural community. I don't think they understand farming very well. I mean, a lot of them might think that farms are worth a lot of money. And of course, I suppose on one level, a farm is worth a lot of money. But the point is, most farmers, most farming families never sell it. And the return that they get on it each year is tiny. I mean, my case, my sums, I reckon that the tax will cost my children around £70,000 a year for 10 years. And my farm doesn't make that much money. So those are the things they need to understand. You know, we can't just put our prices up because, you know, we operate in a competitive market. More imports would come into the country. Our food security would be threatened. So, you know, we're stuck with the margins we have, and we just can't afford to pay that sort of tax level.
So personally, Andrew, does this mean the end of your family farm?
It could do. I mean, we're hoping and praying that they'll see sense and make some concessions for working farms. And if Rachel Reeves had targeted perhaps those people who shelter money from outside agriculture, in farmland. They buy farmland as an investment to get out of tax. Perhaps if she targeted that sort of activity, she'd have enjoyed far more support. But she's used a very blunt tool, and it's really going to hurt family farms and our country's food security. And she needs to think again.
Andrew, they seem to be doubling down. They don't seem to be doing one of Keir's usual famous flip-flops. So where do farmers take it from here?
Well, we're not going to take it lying down. We're working on a plan. Actually, if I weren't on this news channel right now, I'd be in a meeting with farmer colleagues planning our next steps. But, the public are on our side, even Labour voters, majority Labour voters don't want this to happen. So we won't do anything that endangers public support because we're very grateful for that. But we need to make sure the government listens. So we will be escalating our campaign and making sure that Labour MPs, particularly in those marginal constituencies, really hear what we have to say. And, we're working on those plans, but I don't want to give them away now, but you will definitely see a lot more from us.
Some of the farmers we've been speaking to on the channel across the week have said that it will, or it might be involving strike action, and that might affect the food supplies getting into our supermarkets even as early as Christmas. Do you think that is a potential plan?
Obviously, there are lots of different farmers with different views. My view is we should definitely make our voice very heard, but I don't want to upset the public because the public are on our side. Our beef isn't, if you pardon the pun, isn't with the public, it's with the government. So we need to have careful action to make sure that our voice is heard. But I personally don't want to be disrupting anybody's food supplies, not at this point anyway. That's not what we want to do. That's what farmers do. We feed the nation. We're not in the business of holding people to ransom, but we need to make sure we're heard. So expect banners and placards up and down the motorway, various other forms of protest. But we're a range of different opinions, and I don't know what some other people will do.
OK, but you're not going to make like the French and blockade with the tractors and spray manure over the Houses of Parliament?
That's not my style, but, it depends how far you push us, I suppose.
Very, very, very skillfully answered there. Thank you very much. That's farmer Andrew Loftus. Thank you, and good luck from everybody here at GB News. Obviously, it's a fight that we feel you need to win. Now, there's lots more coming up between now and 6 o'clock. Oh my gosh, that's only half an hour, including the ongoing battle between Premier League footballers and the FA over some players refusing to wear rainbow armbands. But first, yes, it's Cameron Walker, and he's back with your news headlines for you.
I am indeed. Thanks, Dawn. It's 5:32 and I'm Cameron Walker in the GB Newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer has once again promised to reduce immigration but avoided setting specific targets. In a speech at Pinewood Studios, he outlined his plan for change, though immigration was absent from his 6 pledges. When pressed, the Prime Minister said the government would only tackle the issue with a serious plan focusing on dismantling people smuggling gangs. Reform UK has quickly criticised the lack of measurable targets, but Sir Keir Starmer argues controlling borders is still a fundamental responsibility. In France, the Prime Minister Michel Barnier has resigned after his government was ousted in a no-confidence vote, which is the first since 1962. 331 MPs backed the motion, sparked by his use of presidential powers to push through a controversial €60 billion budget without a vote. Despite the resignation, he will remain in office until a successor is appointed. President Emmanuel Macron now faces the challenge of selecting a new Prime Minister from within a divided parliament. Macron is set to address the French nation this evening. A man has been charged with the murder of a mother of one who was rammed off an e-bike in a hit-and-run crash. Alana Armstrong, who was 25 from Tibshelf, died at the scene of the collision in Batley Lane in Derbyshire at around 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 26th of November. Derbyshire police say that Keaton Muldoon, who is 23, of Tuckers Lane in Mansfield in Nottinghamshire, was charged with murder and attempted murder on Thursday and has been remanded in custody. The Chancellor is still facing pressure, as you've been hearing, to reconsider inheritance tax charges for farmers, despite a Conservative motion to scrap them being rejected in the Commons. MPs voted 339 to 181 against the motion, but backbenchers insisted they won't break their word to rural voters. The proposed policy would impose a 20% tax on farms worth over £1 million. Farmers and the NFU are concerned that most farms will be affected. A manhunt is still underway in New York for a gunman who shot dead the head of one of America's biggest corporations in the centre of Manhattan yesterday. Police have described the killing of United Healthcare boss Brian Thompson as targeted. New footage has emerged showing the suspect waiting for Thompson outside the Hilton Hotel before shooting him in the back. Detectives are now analysing the footage along with DNA found at the scene in the hopes of identifying the assailant. A discarded cell phone along the suspect's escape route is also being examined as investigators work to piece together the motive behind the pre-planned attack. Right, time to get you into this Christmas spirit now, and we're going to bring you live pictures of Trafalgar Square in central London, where a ceremony is due to start for the Christmas tree light switch on. Performances are expected by the Royal Marine Corps of Drums and Regent Hall Band of the Salvation Army. They're all going to kick things off, and of course the tree is a gift from Norway, something that's happened every year since 1947, recognising the United Kingdom's role in World War II and liberating Norway from that. Those lights switching on at around 6:30 even this evening. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report. Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hi there and welcome to the latest updates from the Met Office for GB News. The next few days we're going to see several bouts of wet and windy weather, one through Thursday night, clearing then through Friday, and then another storm Dara waiting in the wings to hit the UK Friday night and into the weekend. That's going to bring even more significant disruption, but it's wet and windy out there for the rest of Thursday. A band of heavy rain moving through, followed by gusty winds overnight with wind gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour in places, eventually easing so that by dawn, clearer skies and lighter winds will lead to a chilly start to the day, temperatures around the mid-single figures. But it's a bright start, plenty of sunshine around first thing, just a few showers for northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, one or two into northwest England. But away from the showers, there'll be some sunshine as well, and this wind from the west-northwest will be feeling cold first thing Friday. Temperatures close to freezing across parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells, likewise for much of England and Wales. Chance of the odd shower for the far northwest, but otherwise it's a decent start to the day before Storm Dara arrives. And actually the first signs of that will be across Ireland as the rain turns up through the morning, and Northern Ireland sees that rain arriving by lunchtime with the winds picking up, the rain pushing then into West Wales, parts of the southwest and western Scotland, turning heavy as we close out the day. But in the east it stays bright, it stays dry, and it stays on the chilly side, 7 or 8 Celsius. Nevertheless, it's into Friday evening that it will turn particularly wet and windy across much of the UK. The heaviest rain sweeping through Northern Ireland into Scotland, where it will be falling as snow over the hills, and then pushing through England and Wales overnight. But it's during Saturday that the strongest winds will arrive, 70 or even 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts in places.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Nick Arkell. On the M11 northbound, there's some kind of obstruction, we're not sure what yet, but near Junction 6, traffic has been stopped on the M11 northbound side, heading through Essex up towards the interchange with the M25. What I do know is very close by, it could be related, but we've not been told this. The clockwise M25 itself is actually partially blocked at that same interchange, junction 27, where it joins up with the M11. So there are queues on the M25 clockwise as well. The M1 southbound is affected by a broken down vehicle. It's on the slip road coming on from Toddington Services, blocking a lane. The M27 westbound is affected by a two-car collision at junction 11. There's a lane down on the exit slip road causing delays. The M69 northbound slow near Leicester with a vehicle having a tyre change, junction 2 through to the M1 interchange. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Oh God, you keep getting sneaky peeks. It's a good job I'm not doing anything embarrassing, isn't it? Welcome back. I'm Dawn Newsom and this is GB News, and it's, oh my gosh, it's 20 to 6. I hope you're having a lovely day. Thank you for your company. I have to read this message out. I particularly love this message, cleverly combining lots of subjects we're talking about today. It is from Andy. Good afternoon, Andy. Andy says, farmers should chili feed their cows and then bring the cows that are passing wind, not your word, down to London. I'd like to see Khan try and find them for their emissions. I love that. Well done. Keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. This is another subject you're getting a lot in touch with. Now, the Premier League is struggling to deal with several players refusing to wear LGBTQ plus armbands and jackets due to their religious beliefs. Manchester United have been forced to scrap their rainbow jacket initiative after Nusayr Mazrou cited his religious objections against the cause. The Football Association decided not to get involved in that particular case and have also decided to avoid taking action against Crystal Palace captain Mark Gui after he wrote "I love Jesus." You can see the picture there on his rainbow armband. A move that is banned by the FA guidelines even. Right, well, we can talk now, I think, hopefully, to Kate Barker, who is the CEO of the LGB Alliance. Kate, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Now, we've had 3 instances in 1 week with an Ipswich Town player, Crystal Palace, and now a Man United player refusing to wear rainbow armbands and, in one case, a rainbow jacket. What do you make of this situation?
Well, look, it's a really good thing to try and encourage marginalised communities to play football. It's a wholly terrible idea to try and compel the whole world to join in some kind of enforced celebration of that group. What I think is even worse than that is to then frame it in such a way that if you don't want to wear an armband for whatever reason, and that's entirely up to you, you are therefore some kind of homophobic or transphobic bigot. It's just really, really extraordinary. It feels very authoritarian. And I mean, I think the FA is completely right to ban religious symbols. The reason they're hesitating here, and I think they haven't quite known what to do about this particular footballer, is that they're coming to realise that the brand of ideology that the rainbow has come to represent is actually a faith-based position too. It's not science, it's not real, the sort of LGBTQ plus belief in gender. And it's very difficult for them to say, well, look, we're going to ban you talking about this belief, which might be in God, but we're going to mandate that you celebrate this other belief with a big armband that you absolutely must wear when you go on the pitch. So I think they find themselves in a really, really tricky position. And they should be, I hope somebody there has got a bit of common sense and a bit of grit to be able to say, who are we getting this advice from and who is it for? Who is it helping? Nobody likes it. It's extremely authoritarian. And the people that don't like it the most, I have to say, are gay people. Because LGBTQIA+ is not gay people. It's only the first 3 letters. We don't need to be celebrated. We don't want to force people to be wearing rainbows or cheering us on the whole time. And for us, being kind of lumped together with what's essentially a lobby group is actually really hurting gay rights. So I hope that the FA and the Premier League really start to think about what it is they're trying to impose on not just their players, but on all the supporters as well.
Well, there are some groups, the Rainbow Devils, who are the Man United, gay fans group, if you like, who feel that this has put them in an awkward situation, almost implying that if you don't support wearing the rainbow flag or the rainbow jacket, that in some way makes you homophobic. I mean, you quite clearly don't think that's the case.
Yeah, of course it doesn't. I think people have got exactly their own reasons, and they can remain private about why they do or don't want to do something. I don't like to be part of coercing people into supporting me or anybody in my community. I think that's not a way to win hearts and minds. But the thing to remember is that flags are such a potent symbol, aren't they? Really, and
yes.
The message that you get from them, in part, depends on who's waving it. So years ago, the gay pride marches, where there'd be people waving the rainbow, and we would be like a plucky band of minority, a small group of people really hoping to get equality with the rest of the population. But now that flag belongs to the state and to the establishment. It's on police cars. If you go into any government building, it's on every civil servant's lanyards. They're digging up the zebra crossings and putting rainbow crossings there. So it's completely the opposite. It's a really weird 180. And I think people like the FA and the Premier League are really behind the curve with this, because they think people support it. But nobody likes to be told what to do. They certainly don't like to be told, do this or else. And that's very much what this feels like. It's got a really punitive whiff to it, which is why I think people are objecting. And I had a look on social media actually at some of the comments about all this, and there was a handful of people saying, "Oh well, we shouldn't wear the rainbow because I hate those gays and all the rest of it." But the majority of people were sensible, tolerant, ordinary people saying, "Enough already with this. Like, we get it, but why should this one particular group be picked up? Why not disabled people, or why not older people? Why must we celebrate this particular group?" And I say that as a lesbian myself, who used to absolutely love the rainbow and really feel I could get behind it, but it's been appropriated by lobby groups and extremists and people.
Hey, just very quickly, and we are running out of time. Do you think that they should just drop the rainbow thing now?
Oh, that's a tough one. We're talking about that.
Just quickly, Kate, we're running out of time.
I'd hate to see it go, but it's not helping us at the moment.
OK, great. Thank you very much for joining us. Kate Barker, the CEO of the LGB Alliance. Thank you very much, Kate, for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, could we be facing a crisis at Christmas? Guinness storehouses are warning that they may have to ration the famous stout due to unprecedented demand. I'm Dawn Neeson on GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far. You really don't want to miss this one. See you soon.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunç Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunç and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror, and I've heard this story so many times before,
Yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan, and they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just like suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with, and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sorry, we are professional here. I'm Dawn Newsom, this is GB News. Welcome back. Just in time there. Now, I'm sitting in for... have I got Guinness on my lips now? Sitting in for Martin Daubney this afternoon. Now, a true disaster... wait for it, has hit the UK as the owner of Guinness has placed limits on pub and bar purchases of the Irish-made stout following a rush of sales, not me, by the way, this is only one, which has reportedly sparked some panic buying ahead of Christmas. Now, Diageo have promised consumers that supplies won't be running low over the festive period and the number of kegs was being managed. GB News reporter Will Hollis has been enjoying his afternoon as he spent it where else? In the pub.
Guinness is one of the most popular drinks in pubs up and down the country, not just here in Britain, but the Irish Stout is popular around the world. So popular that stocks in the UK are dwindling. There's a bit of a shortage. Let's speak to Layla, who's the landlord of the Globe, the oldest pub in Leicester. Have you heard about this shortage? How bad is it?
So I have heard things, other kind of pubs are a bit concerned about things. Personally, our supply is doing okay, but we don't know how long that's going to last. It's just something that we are potentially concerned about in the future, yeah.
Other pubs have told GB News that they're only allowed to buy one keg a week because Diageo, the pub, the company that runs Guinness, owns Guinness, says they're having to manage supplies, manage distribution. Have you noticed any change in the supplies that you're getting?
Well, currently our supplies seem to be okay, but I mean we don't know how long that's going to last for, and whether something down the line is going to change. So
this is a time when Guinness, as well as drinks at pubs around the country, sell really well because it's Christmas. How popular is Guinness right now, particularly in Christmas periods, but in 2024 when particularly younger people are drinking more Guinness?
I mean, it's a staple for us generally. I mean, people love a pint of Guinness. It's always sold really well. And we're kind of seeing an uptake as well, definitely. You were saying how young people are drinking it more. It's just really popular for all ages, definitely.
And we know that 0% alcohols as well as low percent alcohols are really popular at the moment as well. Particularly Guinness Zero seems to be selling really well. We've got a Guinness here that's perfectly poured right in front of us. Why are people choosing to have 0% alcohol beers as well as Guinness?
I think people want to have the pub experience. They want to still socialise with their friends, but they feel like either through health benefits or just kind of moderating kind of themselves a bit better, it's nice to have an alcohol-free option available. And, you know, the Guinness Zero product's really good, and it sells really well for us as well.
Layla at the Globe. I couldn't leave without tasting this fantastic Guinness. Usually I'm a lager drinker, but cheers. Very nice indeed.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Will Hollis, who has been suffering for his art, standing in a pub drinking Guinness. Cheers. Right, no, I think that leaves me just to say thank you so much for your company this afternoon. I have been Dawn Neeson, standing in for Martin Daubney. I will be Dawn Neeson again at 3 o'clock tomorrow, as Martin has another day off, and we have loads more festive fun for you. So you don't want to miss it. 3 till 6 tomorrow. I'll see you then. Thank you so much for your company. Have a lovely, lovely Thursday evening, but don't go too far, because Michelle Dewberry is up next with a real Christmas cracker of a show for you. Cheers. See you tomorrow.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest updates from the Met Office for GB News. The next few days we're going to see several bouts of wet and windy weather, one through Thursday night, clearing then through Friday, and then another storm Dara waiting in the wings to hit the UK Friday night and into the weekend. That's going to bring even more significant disruption, but it's wet and windy out there for the rest of Thursday. A band of heavy rain moving through, followed by gusty winds overnight with wind gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour in places, eventually easing so that by dawn clearer skies and lighter winds will lead to a chilly start to the day, temperatures around the mid-single figures. But it's a bright start, plenty of sunshine around first thing, just a few showers for northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, one or two into northwest England. But away from the showers, there'll be some sunshine as well, and this wind from the west-northwest will be feeling cold first thing Friday. Temperatures close to freezing across parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells, likewise for much of England and Wales. Chance of the odd shower for the far northwest, but otherwise it's a decent start to the day before Storm Dara arrives. And actually the first signs of that will be across Ireland as the rain turns up through the morning, and Northern Ireland sees that rain arriving by lunchtime with the winds picking up, the rain pushing then into West Wales, parts of the southwest and western Scotland, turning heavy as we close out the day. But in the east it stays bright, it stays dry, and it stays on the chilly side, 7 or 8 Celsius. Nevertheless, it's into Friday evening that it will turn particularly wet and windy across much of the UK. The heaviest rain sweeping through Northern Ireland into Scotland, where it will be falling as snow over the hills, and then pushing through England and Wales overnight. But it's during Saturday that the strongest winds will arrive, 70 or even 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts in places.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Nick Arkell. The M25 is stopped by a collision. Completely stopped junction 8 just after that turning for Reigate. It's congested back to junction 9 all because of a collision. As I say, traffic is completely stopped currently on the anti-clockwise side of the M25 just after junction 8. Clockwise side, long delays remain where there was an incident, junction 27, and the M11 as it crosses there northbound is also backing up with an incident earlier on, all open though. M40 southbound, the lane closure with a vehicle having its tyre changed, junction 11 through to 10 near Cherwell Valley services, and the M62 eastbound in Cheshire, heavy with a broken down vehicle, junction 11 through to 12 into Manchester. Looking at traffic on the M66 southbound, it's getting round an incident, junction 1, the motorway is partially blocked coming down past the Ramsbottom turning. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000